never let them get inside your head. They'll tell you what to do in life instead of everything you know that you can get. Don't let them guide your life towards regret. I'll fight for what I love with every breath. My past is filled with things I won't forget. I use them all to push me to my best. So treat the worst of times just like a test. If only I could go back in time, I'd tell myself that everything will end up alright. Just push yourself, test yourself, figure out what you like, and find your limits, don't be rigid, always work towards a prime. Surround yourself with open minds, people can change your life. A few friends with intent can help you feel alive. Find a passion, take some action, and with a little time, just be patient, make a statement, try to enjoy your life. They'll try to kick you while you're down. They wanna rise up while you drown. They wanna fill your head with doubt. They're silently scared that you'll figure it out. I'll make it look like I'm losing, won't bother hiding my bruises. And when they finally think you're wounded, then it's your chance to be ruthless. I'll make it look like I'm losing, won't bother hiding my bruises. And when they finally think you're wounded, then it's your chance to be ruthless.
You never told us we'd be fighting humans. More like angry demons with skin. Everything was quiet. Then we heard one whisper, peekaboo, before jumping out of a bush and mowing down 17 of our guys. They wrote, send more in the blood of our fallen on our own dropship. One screamed, this is Sparta, and kicked our general off a cliff. Are you crazy? I'm not going back. One of them bit me. Through armor. I have tetanus now. One kept throwing our energy grenades back at us with a pickleball racket. They brought a goose. Just a regular, angry goose. And let it loose. We surrendered. They left a note that said, be right back. When we picked it up, hish, it exploded. I tried playing dead. One yelled, unzip its pants! I've never ran faster in my entire life.
I approve of those AI videos. I will always keep watching that shit. Unzip its pants. I never ran so fast in my life. What's going on, ladies and gentlemen? We got everything situated here. Nope, that's a little crooked. There we go. Got everything set up and ready to go. We got Rumble on the top, YouTube on the bottom over there with the chat. We were originally going to do the one about the unaccompanied children, but they had a few people ask questions, literally went to go vote for like 2 hours, came back, had a few people ask questions, and then quit. Like that was it. So yeah, we're going to do this one, the foreign abuse of U.S. courts. I don't know what happened in that hearing, but I need to go back and watch it all to find out. Not going to be worth it tonight. This one will. How y'all doing tonight? The Roz Rodriguez. Better timing versus during Timcast. I get you. But hey, I follow Rob. That plus the fact that, you know, I came home early from work today. Usually I'm just now getting ready and getting set up to do the shows, so by 7 I can go live at that point. You know, give me a little bit of time to get situated and get settled from coming home from work and everything like that. I do want to do the show at a different time frame, but I can't do that until I don't have to get up at 4 or 5 o'clock in the morning to go to work. But we're going to cover this one here because I wanted to hear this one. I never really got the chance. So this will be the first time I'm actually hearing this information too. Some of the others I have heard, but not this one. And I don't really know much of who's going to be in it. I've heard like a clip or two here or there from this one, but I can't really say anything myself as far as witness shill, anything that we normally do when we do these kinds of things. But this one should be fun. I want to see what they're talking about with foreign abuse of the U.S. court system.
The committee will come to order. I want to thank the witness. Whoops.
Okay, Isa.
I want to thank the witnesses today
Isa,
for joining
Raskin.
us and to
I don't know who the fuck that
to
is.
deal
on the
with
other side.
a number
And Ross.
of important issues.
Okay, so that's just his
I
help.
apologize. I'm having a Ronald Reagan teleprompter moment here. Let me get the script. Nope.
And
One page off. You know, the difference between being here too long and not being too long is I still recognize when the opening statement and the script have been reversed. For now. The subcommittee will come to order without objection. The chair is authorized to
Johnson
declare a
wouldn't even
recess
know
at
which
any
one was
time.
which.
We welcome everyone here today on a hearing on foreign abuse of U.S. courts. I want to include that this is the title, but not by any means the limitation. And there are a multitude of bills which have been made available to everyone here that we believe are open and available for discussion. So we have a distinguished panel, and I recognize that you're able to go into areas beyond any one piece of legislation. I'll now recognize myself for that opening statement. Again, I want to thank the witnesses and make it clear that the Chinese Communist Party is waging what they call legal warfare using the U.S. courts. Although this is not new, the previous administration elevated it by covering repeatedly a number of the areas in which the CCP has been, in fact, using our system against us. This is over and above the 10,000 attacks a day that occur on the internet. This is over and above their spying. This is over and above the abuses that occur on companies in China. This is, in fact, using our patent system, our trademark system, and our courts to their advantage. We take this seriously that we will not be abused any longer. Legislation and rule changes by the administration need to happen and happen now. Let's make it clear. There are legal actions that the Chinese businessmen and others do, and we want to make sure they're protected, just as we want to make sure that American companies, European companies, and individuals all over the world have access to our courts, to our patent and trademark system, and to our economy. In fact, some of our own laws have made it easier for the Chinese to take advantage of us. Our courts are the backbone of our Constitution, and we will protect it. Legislation that sanctions the PRC alone cannot be enough. We also have to strengthen the system itself from this type of activity. One of them is, in fact, open and transparent disclosure of who is truly behind a litigant. That includes third-party funding of litigation. It also includes, and should include, a thorough recognition that often there are a series of shell companies, even U.S. Subsidiaries that, in fact, have little to do with anything except covering their true source. All of that is not new. We see it in criminal operations, in human trafficking, in drug smuggling, in commercial fraud, and that is not limited to any one country. But the fact that it's backed by a powerful country who is using and weaponizing this is particularly disturbing. As we all are aware, often we are just a few weeks, few months, or maybe a few hours in new technology ahead of China compromising it and using it. That includes a lookalike of the F-13. That includes a duplicate of the CERN super collider new version That one will be out before ours is built here in the United States. So we're not going to be able to fix it all here today, and it's not all within our jurisdiction. What is within our jurisdiction is to look at and to make available greater transparency, to empower our judges to order that transparency,
Not live.
and
No,
in
this
fact
was-
to make it clear that a case should not go
This is
forward
the only one I haven't
if,
heard anything really from.
as
and
is
this was
constitutional,
yesterday.
a person accused of anything criminally is entitled to be faced by
Teresa?
their
How you
accusers,
doing, Joe?
their true accusers, which would include those who have people step forward. That is our law. But in civil matters, that often is a
fumbling the fuck out
one-way
of this,
street.
Lisa.
Defendants under Rule 26 have to disclose if they are insured, have to disclose, quite frankly, their own financial condition, and even the financial condition of their principals. That is not always the case in the case of the plaintiff, and we need to have that. In preparation for this hearing, I have met with a great many companies and law firms who use third-party litigation funding or who partner with other companies. None of them object to, in fact, the transparency of disclosing that. Many of them have cautioned that the discretion by the judge as to admissibility to the jury is a different story. And I want to make that clear because it is not the intention of this chair or of any legislation I have yet seen to interfere with a judge's decision on admissibility. But when it comes to the right to know, whether in camera or otherwise, this information is critical in making the decision about protective orders and the conduct of the case.
I think there's one situation that he's actually referring to, but I'm not totally sure which one that is.
With a judge's decision on admissibility. But when it comes to the right to know, whether in camera or otherwise, this information is critical in making the decision about protective orders and the conduct of the case.
I mean, that could
The
be a
subcommittee
justification for all
has
federal.
broad jurisdiction as to the courts, but
federal
we want to
enforcement.
use it wisely. And in this case, recognizing that transparency is one of the most important tools that we have, we want to make sure that
that'll
it
work.
is brought to the attention of everyone. As I said earlier, this hearing does include a number of other pieces of legislation that I believe our panel is able to answer, and we appreciate your indulgence when those questions are asked. And with that, I recognize the ranking member for his opening statement.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and thank you to the witnesses for being here today. This subcommittee has held a series of bipartisan hearings over the last few years on the threat from the government of China. As a strategic competitor, China is seeking to develop cutting-edge technology to win the so-called AI arms race with the United States. It also competes for soft power around the world, competes for economic predominance, and
That woman in the
competes for
back looks
strategic
hug as fuck.
resources. There is nothing wrong with competition.
This is
There
her
is a
fucking
problem
speech, isn't it?
with breaking the rules to get ahead, and that is what China has sought to do. Over our hearings, we have examined cases of economic espionage, threats to American intellectual property,
Oh, I don't think he is.
cybersecurity risks, and the different ways these actions by China
No, but
threaten
Obama has
U.S.
stuff.
national security. Today, we're here to examine the use of our court
is just
system
the-
by Chinese actors.
Teresa, I think this is just the start. This DNI release, I think this is just the start. This goes a lot fucking further. This goes a lot further, and it's all starting to really fucking make sense to me now as to like Obama was the psychological part in people. Okay, you said he was trying to interfere with everything. You're nuts. There's nothing there. There's no proof. Blah blah blah. Meanwhile, you hid it in a fucking basement somewhere, and then all of a sudden it comes out to be that was true. The Russiagate hoax shit was everything. They tried to psychologically play you like a fucking fiddle, and it almost worked because they really didn't have to do anything much more than what they were thinking past changing the votes. They were only, what was it, a 2.3 point fucking lead is what they had really on a to scale a 2-point to 3-point lead, which is in the margin of error for Clinton the entire time, even though everybody was sitting there saying it's 97% Hillary Clinton. No, the polls were actually saying something a lot fucking closer. That was the psychological part of it. 2020 was the actual physical thing. There's more to it than just this. These two are connected. Guarantee it. And it's because of Biden that these two are connected. Biden was the fucking puppet. This motherfucker had cancer. We know he had cancer walking into the presidency. When he decided to run for presidency, he knew he had fucking cancer. And that was covered up. All of that was covered up. He was a puppet. And there is something deeper. I don't think it was Obama. But it could well have been. Don't forget, Biden did tell you during the campaign, we made the most extensive voter fraud organization in history.
We absolutely agree that China is seeking to gain ground in our strategic competition by encouraging Chinese businesses to harm American companies, and that can include through our court system. I've enjoyed working with Chairman Issa and my colleagues on these bipartisan hearings, and I sincerely hope we can continue to examine the threat from the government of China to our national security, our economy, and our power abroad on a consensus basis. But there are areas where we have disagreed. Last Congress, this committee slated a partisan bill for markup that would have prevented companies on certain sanctions lists from obtaining new U.S. patents or enforcing the ones they already own, devaluing U.S. patents.
I mean, turning with that age, I'd go ahead and say, yeah, it's very, very likely this motherfucker actually did have cancer at that point. That's why he was talking about it so much. That's why he had so much treatment. You remember the lines? Everybody was like, oh, he wears a CPAP machine at night. No, this motherfucker was getting oxygen to breathe. He was dying.
Patents and violating international agreements. While the Preventing Adversarial Patents Act was removed before it could be considered by the committee, the bill was a reminder that there are significant disagreements between the two parties on this issue.
That was his uncle.
So I worry that this hearing on China's, quote, abuse of the U.S. courts may be a Trojan horse to disguise a very different agenda. I fear that as a so-called solution to the China threat, I will hear proposals like, you can only file a case if you disclose all of the funders of your cause. Or you can only file a suit if you are rich enough to pay a huge bond in case you lose. Or let's start limiting discovery rules and make them more restrictive. Or we'll flip the presumption of enforcing foreign judgments wholesale and adopt China's restrictive approach. The answer to a threat cannot be Republicans' tort reform wish list, and our constituents deserve better than a system where only the well-connected and the rich survive, because that's exactly what we would get from that list. This world I just outlined would mean that the big guys, the oligarchs, get their day in court, but the little guys, the Davids to those Goliaths, would be shut out. America's justice system has for so long been a shining light of equality in the world. And we must safeguard this impartial justice system now more than ever.
In the world.
Becoming more like China won't stop China. It won't work in our court system and it won't work in our trade practices. But it's a reasonable concern. Our democracy has been under fire by wannabe authoritarian Donald Trump and his White House cronies, the very big guys who could benefit from all the proposals I just mentioned, who do not care about justice and the rule of law. These folks are the ones who let Democratic senators get tackled to the ground at news conferences and who block members of Congress from federal facilities. These are the leaders who tell the DOJ to investigate members of Congress who dare criticize the president and who nominate far-right MAGA loyalists like Emil Bovee to federal judgeships, knowing that these sycophants will put Trump's whims above the Constitution. And if we start chipping away at our impartial justice system and make it harder to access, Americans will lose their ability to challenge these assaults on our rights against these rich, connected oligarchs. We cannot let our system become the playground for the big guys, the oligarchs like Donald Trump and his cronies. That's not justice, and we must protect a system where no matter their status, anyone can walk into a U.S. courtroom and be treated as an equal. So again, I thank the chairman and our witnesses, and I look forward to exploring this important issue, and with that, I yield back.
The gentleman yields back. I now am pleased to recognize the ranking member of the full committee for his opening statement.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. And thanks to the witnesses for joining us today.
Like
its ally, the authoritarian government of Russia, the authoritarian government of China presents a serious threat to American democracy, our economy, and our national security. And China's intensifying economic and technological competition with the U.S. has at times led to pitched battles in courtrooms across America. We've seen cases affecting our national security, intellectual property, and the safety of Chinese dissidents living here in the United States. It'd be great if we had a partner in the White House to help us respond to the threat of these repressive autocratic regimes, but Donald Trump has consistently bragged about his marvelous personal relationships with Vladimir Putin, who he has called a genius for invading Ukraine and has consistently praised, and President Xi, who Trump calls a brilliant guy who controls 1.4 billion people with an iron fist, and whom he has praised for sending Uyghurs to labor camps, saying this was exactly the right thing to do. Trump's been systematically dismantling the programs that protect America against espionage, propaganda, and malign political and electoral interference by Russia and China, while simultaneously dismantling the domestic programs that make us strong. His administration has been deleting the programs designed to combat malign foreign power interference in our elections, including the Foreign Influence Task Force at the FBI, the Global Engagement Center at the Department of State, the Critical Infrastructure Partnership Council at the Department of Homeland Security, while simultaneously cutting billions of dollars in critical foreign aid to poorer countries for development and democracy assistance and for humanitarian programs, which China is now gladly taking up in our place. They are filling the void left by Donald Trump's abandonment of the space of foreign assistance. Trump, meantime, has been systematically destroying Radio Liberty, Radio Free Europe, Radio Free Asia, and other broadcast vehicles that we use to counter Chinese and Russian propaganda and disinformation all over the world. Trump has put Carrie Lake in charge of world communications, an election denier, a January 6th denier, an all-around mindless repeater of garbage conspiracy theories and lies, totally consistent with the Chinese and Russian agendas for the destruction of American democracy. This hearing is important, but it ignores the structural shift in our government in favor.
There's no way in fuck you're going to bring Carrie Lake into that. Especially the only thing that went through with Carrie Lake's fucking trial was a sham of a goddamn. I love how I fucking actually took this freeze frame here. Really, I need to just print it out and cut the mouth hole out and just fuck your mouth right now, because the fucking judge tried to dismiss the case. Arizona Supreme Court said, no, there's some fucking merit to this. You have to hear it. So the judge got his pussy hurt about the whole damn thing and said, okay, fine. If you want to win this case, you must prove that not a single verification was done at the level 1 level, which was never her claim in the first place. She said they didn't do it correctly. But to win the case, Carrie Lake had to prove that not a single verification was ever done. So you want to bring Carrie Lake up into that? Motherfucker, that's not abuse of the court system, and it has nothing to do with foreign interference in it. I don't know what the fuck you're talking about here, Raskin, other than trying to spray hate at anybody that actually brought some fucking heat your damn way, which is pathetic as fuck.
Of the autocracies and kleptocracies who are Donald Trump's political soul brothers. It is also, of course, a distraction from the mounting failures, scandals, and embarrassments of this administration. Republicans this month passed a bill to throw 17 million Americans off of their Medicaid health insurance.
No, we
the
did not.
rescission package Congress passed last week cuts $1 billion from public broadcasting and billions more from foreign aid, all of which is nothing but music to the ears of propagandists and foreign recruiters for China and Russia.
How?
Meantime, Trump is refusing to release the Epstein files, more than 100,000 documents which he was demanding for years in order to blow the lid off of what he and Pam Bondi and Kash Patel and Dan Bongino and the mega media were describing as a massive global child sex abuse and human trafficking ring for the rich and powerful. Bondi, acting under the direct supervision of Donald Trump, ordered more than 1,000 FBI agents to work as part of continuing 24-hour shifts, poring over more than 100,000 documents in the Epstein file, photographs, videos, emails, and texts. They were instructed to immediately flag all references to Donald Trump, all appearances of Donald Trump, and all images, likenesses, pictures, and videos of Donald Trump. At the same time, Kash Patel has been administering loyalty tests and lie detector tests to FBI agents. So this is a profoundly troubling and suspicious turn of events as Donald Trump seeks to sweep the whole thing under the rug, and our colleagues in the majority have now canceled all bills because they don't want to go before the Rules Committee to have to face more votes on whether or not to release the Epstein files.
Look, bitch made motherfucker. I'm pissed about that too, but your rundown of all this shit is pathetically fucking weak. If you had something, you would have released it your goddamn self and took all the fucking credit for it. It was never a thing. It's never been a thing. Just like the Russian collusion bullshit, that was never a thing. But yet here we are. Oh, Epstein was he was on Epstein's plane. They got all kinds of pictures together. They must be well connected. You haven't proven any goddamn bit of it. And if it is, wood chipper he goes too. I got no problem saying it. What the fuck is this, Raskin? Why weren't you calling for the release of that shit when you all had the House, the Senate, and the presidency? Why wasn't this? Oh, this wasn't at the top of your mind? The biggest fucking pedophile fucking case we've ever seen in this fucking country's history, directly linked to our former president? Oh, I think that would have been at the top of your fucking list. Would it have not have been? As petty and fucking pathetic as you all are, you would have released that shit immediately. But it's not there. And because nobody could confirm or deny anything, y'all can say whatever the fuck you want to, and it's not defamation because the speech and debate clause. You're members of the Congress. As long as somebody introduces you as rep or senator, you're covered. You're doing official duties.
So, we're examining the threat from China as though Donald Trump is not ceding more global power to China every single day, but he is. During his first term, he received millions of dollars personally from the Chinese government and state-owned companies, to say nothing of the valuable trademarks Chinese authorities rushed to grant him and Trump family members. In exchange, he opposed sanctions against Chinese telecom companies and banks, even when they threatened our national security. He even tried to cancel military exercises with Japan and South Korea because Russia and China voiced objections to it. His second term has seen more catering and appeasement to the autocrats. Over the last 6 months, the administration has weakened America's soft power abroad by defunding foreign aid programs systematically and closing embassies. It's hurt America's economy with illegal and arbitrary tariffs that leave us isolated and hapless
What
in
up,
the world.
Carolyn?
In his second administration, Trump appears to be hell-bent on
Yeah, I'm
remaking
going
his
a little bit
administration
early.
in the image of Xi's regime, cracking down on media outlets he disapproves.
I got home early. Wanted to do this early because I'm going to join Scott later, a little bit later on still for some gaming. But I got home early. I wanted to do this early. I wanted to do everything early because Davey's gone. Scott didn't want to do anything but games. So here we are, a little early. What up, Neuro? How you doing?
Approves of destroying academic freedom with attempted hostile takeovers of colleges and universities, including America's oldest university, Harvard, attacking attorneys for representing clients or causes he disfavors, purging libraries and censoring books, sending masked agents in unmarked vans to arrest foreign students without arrest warrants for voicing opinions he disagrees with, shipping people to El Salvador's notorious prison of torture, and using AI to surveil individual social media posts and to create.
You mean the motherfucker that rallied a whole bunch of people that actually attacked the university? You think inciting fucking violence is okay as long as you're an immigrant? God damn, dude.
Create a mega database of all Americans' information. Look, in America, everyone is allowed to petition the court for relief regardless of the depth of their pocket.
Jonah, he can't. He can't fuck the speech and debate clause as part of the Constitution of the United States of America.
Or their country of origin, making it harder for litigants to access the courthouse doors, even in the name of strategic competition with foreign power, would make us less like America. That's not acceptable, obviously. Yet that's exactly what some have suggested, instead of actually developing government policies that make us strong versus China and prevent illegal subversion and interference from China and Russia. In the context of our competition with China, we should never forget that those who would give up essential liberty to purchase a little temporary safety deserve neither liberty nor safety. That's Ben Franklin. This has been a matter on which there's been strong bipartisan agreement in the past. I hope Republicans and Democrats in this committee can continue to uphold this basic yet vital framework, as difficult as Donald Trump has made it. I yield back the balance of my time.
I thank the gentleman for his opening statement, and I will note that in September we have both the FBI director and the AG coming, so we are not ignoring any of your concerns, and I thank the ranking member. Without objection, all other opening statements will be included in the record. It's now my privilege to introduce our witnesses, and if you don't mind, I'd like to go out of order a little bit. We have the gentleman from North Carolina, Mr. Moore, here to introduce his witness. You could use your You don't get that on this committee, but we would like you to introduce your witness.
Well, thank you and good morning. It's an honor to introduce a constituent of mine, Brad Mueller, who's going to be testifying before the committee. And I'll read briefly about his bio, and then I'll just talk like we do from North Carolina about him. Brad is a marketing communication strategist with more than 35 years of experience, and he works presently for Charlotte Pipe and Foundry. If you like pipes, if you've ever drank water, then you probably drank out of one of their pipes. They're the leading producer of pipes in the United States. They're a fifth-generation company based in Charlotte. They were founded, I believe, in 1901. Right. You weren't there then, though. I don't think so.
Not quite.
But Brad's got a very distinguished background. He actually was in Washington for 10 years, where he worked for USAID in the Bush administration, he was the desk officer and managing foreign aid programs for Afghanistan and later for Central and Eastern Europe after the 1989 fall of the Berlin Wall. He then later went to work for the late Michael Deaver, who was the former Deputy Chief of Staff to President Reagan on a variety of public affairs, international relations, and trade issues. And he is extremely active in the community. He is known internationally really as an expert on trade issues, and I can tell you, I consider it a real honor to have Brad in back home to be one of my constituents. And this company has such an amazing reputation. But if you want to find out information about how trade is affecting businesses right here, how unfair trade is hurting businesses and causing job loss, you have an amazing expert to testify today. So I'm proud to have a fellow Tar Heel from the great state of North Carolina here with you today, and appreciate the committee hearing from him. So treat him nice if you don't mind. Thank you. Thanks. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. And I promise to treat him nice. As a matter of fact, I consulted with JM Eagle of California, and they believe that you are a superb witness,
I guess.
Since you're the two competing top two.
I turned the screwdriver
with that,
one time, and that was
I'd like to introduce Miss Della Briere. Hopefully I got that close to right. Who is a senior fellow at the Foundation for Defense of Democracy, a think tank focusing on national security, foreign policy. Her work at FDD focuses on China policy. Ms. Della Briere also is the co-founder of Horizon Advocacy, a consulting firm focused on the implications of China's approach to geopolitics. Welcome. Mr. Julian Ku is the faculty director of the international program at the Maurice A. Dean Distinguished Professor of Constitutional Law at the university's Maurice D. Dean School of Law. Professor Ku research is focused on the relationship of international law, the U.S. Constitution, and China's relationship with international law. I think Mr. Bradford Muller has been well introduced, and we're thrilled to have you here today. And lastly, we go to Mr. DeLeo, thank you, DeLeo, who is the Stephen A. Cozen Professor of Law at the University of Pennsylvania. Professor DeLeo is also holds appointments as a professor of political science and director of the Center for the Study of Contemporary China at Penn. His research focuses on China's engagement in international order, law, and legal institutions, and their relationship to the politics and policies of China and the U.S.-China relationship. We welcome all of our distinguished witnesses, and pursuant to the committee rules, I would ask that you rise to take the oath. Customarily raise your right hand. Do you swear or affirm that under penalty of perjury that the testimony you're about to give is true and correct to the best of your knowledge, information, and belief? So help you God. Thank you. Please be seated. Let the record reflect that all witnesses answered in the affirmative. For all the witnesses, please be aware that although we ask that you stay within 5 minutes, your entire opening statement, along with additional material that you either have today or that you can supplement, will be made in order and a permanent part of the record. I thank you, and Ms. Delabrie, it is not Briere, it's your 5 minutes.
Thank you for the opportunity to testify today. It's an honor to be speaking before you and the committee and alongside my distinguished co-witnesses. Beijing competes with co-option, not confrontation. The Chinese Communist Party does not directly attack its adversaries' systems. Instead, Beijing seeks to supplant them, subvert them from the inside, such that they advance Beijing's agenda rather than obstructing it. In the military domain, for example, China positions to control critical information systems, value chains, even political stakeholders, such that it can decide where missiles are positioned and how they're perceived, rather than having to launch them itself. In trade, China has not sought to supplant the World Trade Organization, for example. Instead, Beijing has sought to manipulate it by holding others to its rules without following them itself, such that China can weaponize international free trade. And inside the United States, the Chinese Communist Party uses the American legal system to advance Beijing's agenda, punish its opponents, and neutralize U.S. defenses. Benefiting from the reality that China's centralized, opaque system allows it to out-resource competitors in courts, to co-opt key stakeholders, and to manipulate information. This poses a threat to American security and prosperity. Offensively, Beijing works to shape U.S. laws and regulations and their implementation, in many cases via U.S. entities that have been co-opted by dependence on or resources from the PRC. Beijing has also proven its willingness to use the U.S. legal system to punish those who stand in its way. Beijing does so, for instance, with SLAPP lawsuits that are intended to censor and intimidate critics by burdening them with costly legal defenses. Beijing also does so with IP lawsuits that, through the discovery process, granted access to valuable technology. And on the flip side, China provides IP litigation funding for its companies in order to protect them from facing the consequences for their tech theft. Beijing also defensively games U.S. laws and regulations, circumventing and neutering American efforts to defend against Chinese bad practices. In response to U.S. tariffs and other trade restrictions, for instance, China transships through third-party countries, often obscuring country of origin. China also localizes in countries that have preferential trade relationships with the United States. And China localizes in the United States. Doing so allows Beijing not only to avoid U.S. trade restrictions, it also allows China to benefit from preferential policies that are intended to support U.S. domestic and partner industry. Moreover, localization in the United States allows Beijing to maintain and to expand its united front, the network of co-opted stakeholders through which it undermines the U.S. system from the inside. This entire program, offensive and defensive, benefits from Chinese government resourcing. Directly and indirectly, the Chinese state provides the resources necessary for its agents to outlast and outspend their competitors and their targets in U.S. courts. The Chinese state also provides subsidies and guidance for go-out companies such that they can expand their presence abroad. And the Chinese state provides policy insurance mechanisms that are intended to de-risk investments that might be vulnerable to regulatory hurdles, as well as instructions for navigating U.S. procurement and policy. Because Chinese abuse of the U.S. legal system is systemic, it demands a systemic response. tactical measures like anti-SLAPP legislation and protections to defend American companies from exposing their IP to China via discovery are important, but the U.S. response cannot end there. Chinese and Chinese-backed entities should have increased information sharing and transparency requirements when bringing cases. Those receiving direct or indirect funding from the Chinese government should face a higher pleading standard in the U.S. So should American entities that work with them. U.S.-based actors that engage with Chinese state-backed and government-linked players operating in or importing into the U.S. market should have to disclose as much. Law firm and lobbyists that work with those entities should not be eligible for U.S. federal government funding or defense industrial-based procurement. More generally, sovereign immunity should not be extended to PRC entities. Foreign entity of concern provision should be expanded to apply to all government authorities and support programs, and strengthened with presumptions of denial. Across the board, the definition of a Chinese entity should be tightened such that Beijing cannot circumvent through shell companies, joint ventures, or localization. China is an adversary. This has been internalized in the United States, if belatedly. So has the strategic imperative of decoupling from China economically and industrially. But to do that, the United States also has to decouple its legal system. Thank you.
Thank you. Professor Koo.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, Ranking Member Johnson, and distinguished members of this committee. Thank you for this opportunity to address what I call China's asymmetric lawfare challenge to the United States judicial system. I just want to define lawfare as a term for us to understand here. Lawfare is the systematic use of judicial proceedings to accomplish strategic or military goals, political goals. This involves manipulating legal processes to undermine, discredit, or impose substantial financial burdens on adversaries through judicial mechanisms. The Chinese party-state lawfare demonstrates consistent patterns. Initiating entities maintain ostensible independence from the Chinese government. Chinese plaintiffs often retain most prestigious, the best U.S. law firms to represent them. And even if their litigation is often in the preliminary phase and it will impose substantial costs on defendants. I call these tactics asymmetric lawfare because China is exploiting the weaknesses in its own legal system to gain advantages in U.S. courts, while the U.S. and U.S. plaintiffs cannot reciprocally use China's legal system for its own strategic goals. These tactics that we're going to discuss here can only really be employed by China and never by the United States. And China's lawfare raises particular concern because China's unique control over its private sector through state-owned banks, Communist Party cells, and United Front partnerships means ostensibly private Chinese companies are vulnerable to being co-opted to serve the party state's political goals. Now, I want to give two examples of what I call Chinese party-state lawfare to illustrate the problem. The first case is from Long Island, where I'm from. It involves Ma Ju, a Hui Muslim activist who has testified before Congress and the UN against China's repression of his ethnic minority within China. He was served papers in Nassau County Court in New York State seeking enforcement of a $12.5 million judgment that was issued in China. Ma claims that this judgment was fraudulently obtained and that he couldn't defend himself before fleeing China. Despite this, the court in Nassau County ordered Ma to pay the full $12.5 million court judgment based on the Chinese court's ruling. This is not isolated. U.S. authorities have identified at least 7 similar lawsuits filed by Chinese entities over 6 years, with 3 under FBI investigation, that's reported. And more broadly, Chinese companies have increasingly pursued commercial litigation in U.S. courts as plaintiffs, not as defendants, and often against Chinese nationals who happen to also be wanted by the Chinese party state for either claims of corruption or maybe for political opposition to the party. So that's one example, I think, of the kind of lawfare that we're up against. Another case from California, Mao Zedong's, the former chairman of the Communist Party, his secretary, Li Rui, became a prominent critic of the Communist Party at the end of his life. And Mr. Li agreed through his daughter to donate his personal diaries to Stanford's Hoover Institution. And after his death in 2019, though, the widow of Mr. Li in China filed suit in Beijing claiming ownership of the diaries. The Beijing court ruled in Ms. Zhang's favor, ordering Stanford to return the original diaries, despite Stanford's attempt to defend itself. And Stanford argues that it received inadequate notice in Chinese courts and was denied an opportunity to contest when it tried to appear. Ms. Zhang, who has recently passed away, but sued in U.S. court, alleging copyright infringement and seeking title based on the Beijing court judgment. The U.S. trial court allowed some of her claims to proceed, and the case has dragged on for over 6 years, 5 to 6 years. And it demonstrates, even if it doesn't result in a positive judgment or a successful judgment for Ms. Zhang, it demonstrates some of the ways in which the Chinese party state uses lawfare for ideological purposes beyond just harassing opponents. Furthermore, it raises a different problem, which is Ms. Zhang, it was very unclear the sources of her funding. She was a widow without any sort of obvious means of wealth, and she funded a 6-year massive lawsuit in California courts, which went on for years, which Stanford has the resources to defend itself, but not all U.S. defendants would necessarily be able to do so. So I want to close by discussing some possible legislative solutions. One would be taking on the American Law Institute's proposal to change the rules in the United States for enforcing foreign court judgments to require reciprocity before enforcing a foreign judgment, or at least change the rules to require foreign someone like defendants to essentially allow defendants a better chance to defend against Chinese court judgment enforcement. And finally, I think there are things we can do to bolster disclosure of foreign funding of litigation, third-party litigation, or through amendments to the Foreign Agent Registration Act to address litigation funding. These reforms will protect American courts' integrity from manipulation by the Chinese party state while preserving what makes our legal system exceptional and valuable. Thank you for your attention.
Thank you. Mr. Mueller.
Chairman Issa, Ranking Member Johnson, and members of the committee, thank you for inviting me to testify today. Charlotte Pipe and Foundry is the nation's leading maker of cast iron and plastic pipe and fittings for plumbing. We're a fifth-generation family-owned business. We've been in continuous operation in the United States for 124 years. We employ 1,800 associates, and through our wholly owned subsidiary, Neenah Foundry, we have another 1,000 employees spread across 11 plants across the United States. In 2017, we filed AD/CVD petitions through our trade association against imports of cast iron pipe and fittings. The Department of Commerce determined that Chinese exporters had undersold and subsidized cast iron pipe in the United States up to 345% less than fair value. For cast iron fittings, Commerce determined the Chinese had undersold those products up to 494%. Duties to counteract these unfair trade practices have been in place since August of 2018. Over the last 7 years, unscrupulous foreign entities have turned to transshipping pipe and fittings through third countries and deploying other forms of evasion and customs fraud to obscure the true origin of their products to avoid paying these duties. The Enforce and Protect Act, or EPA, grants U.S. Customs and Border Protection tools to combat customs fraud. In the 7 years since our orders were issued, we have received 10 positive EPA determinations of transshipping against producers of our products, primarily in Malaysia and Cambodia. When Customs investigated the locations of these alleged producers, they found an empty warehouse, a bus stop, even a massage parlor.
I've never heard of any of these.
Despite Customs' good faith efforts, they have been unable to stop the illegal flow of imports. These entities have no intention of ever paying the duties. When caught transshipping, these companies simply dissolve, and the bad actors reconstitute under a new shell company and resume their unlawful activity. Chinese shippers have been so successfully evading U.S. trade enforcement that they freely advertise their capabilities to, quote, avoid high duties by exporting goods from China to Southeast Asian countries where we change containers and then re-export to the destination country. Multiple news outlets are reporting on the many ways Chinese companies exploit gaps in domestic enforcement to bypass tariffs, duties, and other trade restrictions. I was quoted in the front page story of the New York Times on May 27, lamenting the whack-a-mole nature of the process of tracking down these fraudulent shell companies and shutting them down, only to see them right back in business under a new name. CNBC uncovered a, quote, web of illicit activity that's propping up these shipments from China. Reuters wrote about, quote, Chinese exporters offering sweet deals to U.S. businesses that come wrapped in fraud. The Financial Times reported on how, quote, Chinese exporters are stepping up efforts to avoid tariffs by shipping goods via third countries to conceal their true origin. Evasion and transshipment have been so successful that Customs' effort to collect duties has become futile. Based on our calculations, Chinese producers of our products have successfully evaded more than $44 million of dumping duties, money that they have robbed of the U.S. Treasury. And we have spent $7 million of our own money filing trade cases and EPA petitions in an unsuccessful attempt to enforce U.S. trade law. Customs simply does not have the tools to overcome this determined fraud, and current penalties for such behavior are woefully inadequate. To address this, Representative Boss and Representative Sewell have referred to the House Ways and Means Committee, the Fighting Trade Cheats Act, to strengthen enforcement against trade fraud. This bill attacks evasion of AD/CVD orders by increasing penalties, denying a person and their affiliates engaged in fraud an importer of record number, and allowing private enforcement action to gain immediate injunctive relief against illegal trade flows. To put it bluntly, the AD/CVD process is broken. Without far stronger remedies, industries will be reluctant to undertake these cases. The cost to file and win these cases are exceedingly high, and the promise of relief has become non-existent in the face of lax trade enforcement. I'd like to thank Chairman Issa and Ranking Member Johnson and the committee again for investigating these threats to American economic security and for allowing me to testify today.
Thank you. Professor DeLalle.
Thank you. Chairman Issa, Ranking Member Johnson, members of the committee, thank you for the opportunity to testify. I'm going to address two types of concerns that I think arise in the context of what would be described as problematic uses of U.S. courts and legal processes more broadly by entities linked to the PRC or the Chinese Communist Party. The first category is essentially what one might call abuse, targeting individuals and entities in lawsuits.
Why does this motherfucker look like a goddamn rat in human form? Like, what?
Brought in the U.S. and U.S. courts, for example, against exiled dissidents or U.S. companies that are rivals of favored Chinese companies, or that attempt to deny U.S. parties access to U.S. courts or to the application application of Chinese law or enforcement of Chinese judgments in ways that harm such U.S. parties' interests. The second kind of problem is what one could call avoidance of accountability. That is, Chinese parties seek to avoid the application or challenge the validity of U.S. laws, either through keeping cases or evidence out of U.S. courts or by avoiding the application and enforcement of U.S. law. So how do we address these problems? Well, it's challenging. And the challenge stems in part from the fact that the problematic cases, and they do exist, are not facially or easily distinguishable, certainly not at a wholesale level, from many ordinary claims.
Wait a minute.
Claims that should be allowed to proceed in the U.S. under principles of.
Is this motherfucker's eye fucked up too?
Claims that should be allowed to proceed in the U.S. under principles.
Not the placement, just the position. Is this becoming a thing now? Like all fucked up ass individuals, their eyes are always wonky. You're looking like Tish James here, dude. What the fuck? All right, I'm sorry.
Of applicable U.S. law and fair access to justice. These are things that should be heard in our courts and often align with the interests of U.S. parties, indeed of U.S. non-parties to cases that have similar interests. U.S. courts have a number of tools available to deal with these problems. Some of them might be sharpened, some of them might be used better, but they exist, and they have been used often quite well, and are better than many of the alternative, more broad brush or wholesale tools that might be contemplated. So in terms of vexatious litigation targeting dissidents in exile or disfavored companies for the benefit of Chinese companies, U.S. courts can and have evaluated the claims in individual cases, sometimes finding them credible, sometimes finding them not. U.S. courts can dismiss cases and impose Rule 11 sanctions, something which perhaps they should do more often. They can deny abusive or burdensome discovery requests, easy enough to do under the usual rules of U.S. discovery in proceedings in the U.S., and requests for production of evidence for use in Chinese proceedings, especially when they come from parties or individuals rather than courts in China, could be scrutinized more closely, tightening in effect the 28 U.S.C. 1782 process. The U.S. can and is increasingly going to have to deal, U.S. courts are going to have to deal with the question of recognizing or not recognizing anti-suit injunctions. China started to issue these, particularly in the FRAND-CEP cases for technology. Forum non-convenience motions, which are often attempted by Chinese parties to get cases out of U.S. courts, can be denied and are often denied on the grounds of the public interest in the U.S. and having U.S. parties bring their cases and applying U.S. law, or on the basis of the burdensome effect on U.S.-based parties of litigating in China, or on a judgment in the particular context in which a case would be litigated in China, given the parties, the courts, and the nature of the claims, can decide that this would not be an adequate and available alternative forum in a Chinese court. U.S. courts can also use choice of law rules to deny the application of Chinese law, whether it's inappropriate or where such law would offend U.S. public policy. We see this going on with respect to blocking statutes, where U.S. courts have been unwilling to allow Chinese parties to plead state secrets law, data or cybersecurity laws, or personal information protection laws as reasons for not to comply with discovery requirements. U.S. courts can decline to enforce problematic Chinese court judgment rules and can invoke notions of reciprocity and comity to restrict such enforcement either retail or wholesale, given the lack of Chinese enforcement of U.S. judgments in many cases. And U.S. courts have and do uphold relevant U.S. regulatory laws and their application against Chinese parties' challenges. Think of CFIUS decisions, PCAOB disclosure requirements, Huawei's exclusion from markets for national security reasons, the TikTok ban, and so on. Here I would note the U.S. sovereign and official immunity doctrines and limits to the extraterritorial reach of U.S. statutes have taken away some methods that might be available for dealing with problematic Chinese behavior. But the point here in all of this is the problem of abuse and avoidance of accountability. The tools are there. And the legal tools we have or could readily imagine being available are quite suited to the kind of granular, fact-specific, and case-specific analysis the courts are suited to do. More broad-brush approaches, I think, have challenges and problems. They risk embedding in U.S. law the idea that because abuses by Chinese actors can and sometimes do occur, U.S. law and courts must assume that they do occur. That is at odds with notions of due process and fair access to justice, and harms the interests of U.S. parties. Things, disclosure requirements or other measures that would impede access to U.S. courts would create quite messy mini-trials on collateral issues of the degree of entanglement with the Chinese state. This is a very complicated issue that could be overexpansive and chill the bringing of legitimate claims, even by U.S. parties that happen to have some limited connection to China. Measures explicitly or clearly targeting China risk accelerating a spiral of tit-for-tat moves by China that would indeed adversely affect the interests of the U.S. and U.S. parties. Those may be costs worth bearing, but they are costs that need to be calculated. They also risk making more credible China's narrative that U.S. law and courts are political tools wielded to keep China down and serve U.S. geopolitical
I thank the gentleman.
Thank you.
The remainder of your opening statement will be placed in the record. Without objection, Mr. Knott will be permitted to participate in today's hearing for the purpose of questioning the witnesses if a member yields him time for that purpose. And we welcome the gentleman.
Thank you.
I now recognize the chairman of the full committee, Mr. Jordan. Pursuant to the rules, the gentleman is recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. It's my privilege to be here. I'm familiar with one of the witnesses in the company that he comes from, Charlotte Pipe and Foundry. I've had the privilege of touring their facilities. I know them well. And this is a company that does it the right way. They put their heads down. They do great work. They deliver world-class products that will compete against anybody. But what any company cannot compete against is fraud, manipulation, unfair markets, lack of free markets. And Mr. Mueller, thank you for coming to come and testify today. And I want to be quick and to the point. What legislative proposals are you familiar with that could protect industries like yours that benefit not only just North Carolina, but the entire country and then the world by extension?
Thank you, Congressman. In addition to the Fighting Trade Cheats Act, which I mentioned, which would impose stiffer penalties on these bad actors, take import licenses away, and allow us a private right of action to enforce U.S. trade law. There's also the Protecting American Industry and Labor from International Trade Crimes Act, and I urge Congress to pass and fund that, which would stand up a trade fraud crime unit at the Department of Justice. The bill calls for $20 million in funding. As I mentioned in my testimony, on our 2 products alone, we believe more than $40 million has been uncollected in duties by customs. So if they just had been able to collect on our products, we could double the funding of this trade crime unit to $40 million. We believe that in order to stop this behavior, we have to start prosecuting some of these bad actors because they continue to set up these shell companies. When confronted, they dissolve them, and they're right back in business with a new shell company.
And in your experience, sir, how do these foreign entities gain entry into the United States? Do they have participants in the United States? Are they blind actors? Are they willing and knowing? What's your experience?
There are U.S.-based importers that engage in this fraud, and we know some of those. Glendale Fire in California is one. Wells in Chicago, Wells Plumbing is another. These are U.S.-based importers that are engaged in this illicit activity. And those are the companies that we should be targeting with something like the PALE Act.
And in regards with your experience, sir, given the amount of fraud and sort of the suppressed pricing that the Chinese Communist Party engages in, how responsive have the United States authorities been fielding your complaints in this area?
Well, we tip our hat to Customs. In fact, we met with them last week, our trade association, and we have engaged very cooperatively with Customs, and they do their best to enforce the law. We try to educate them on our products, how to spot the fraudulent products coming in. And so we are very pleased with Customs. They just don't have enough tools to stop this behavior.
Right. Professor Koo, let me transition to you quickly. What are ways that we can disincentivize the Chinese Communist Party on a macro level from continuing to engage in this? Because it's not just Charlotte Pipe and Foundry, obviously. It's everything from biopharma to engines to computing. The theft and obstruction is real and across every sector. How do we dissuade them from continuing this?
Thanks. There's no easy answers here. I wish there was a silver bullet. I think passing the legislation could certainly help. I do think that making clear that the first and foremost that we take these things seriously, then that we force bad actors to disclose the network of funding. The problems in transshipment is some of the bigger problems we see is the way the Chinese party state is intertwined with each other. Yep. We have to assume, unfortunately, that a lot of what look like normal private companies we want to welcome here to the United States have to unfortunately play by different rules because we can't trust them because they're intertwined with the party state at home. And I think it's just unfortunate that's the way we have to be tougher. We have to demand greater disclosure of connections between Chinese companies and the party sort of or partnership groups that they're involved with.
Is there a way to separate doing business with Chinese companies from the Chinese Communist Party?
I mean, I think there is. I mean, I think we do business with, we should do business with whoever, but I think we have to assume that those companies, which are private much of the time, can be co-opted very quickly in a way that we can't in the United States. Right. Force a private company to do something that the government wants it to do. Where so you have to proceed cautiously. It's really just, it's not the United States government's fault. It's China's government's fault for creating this weird web of influence and control that makes, unfortunately, even honest Chinese companies suspect.
Yeah. To the witnesses, thank you, Mr. Chairman. I yield back.
I thank the gentleman. I would note for everyone in attendance the reference to H.R. 1284, which is a bipartisan bill for the private right of action, just to make sure everyone can look that up. I thank you, Mr. Mueller, for mentioning it. With that, we go to the ranking member, Mr. Johnson, for 5 minutes.
God damn it.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. For many years, the American judicial system has been a shining light of fairness and impartiality to the world, a system independent from undue influences or of the other branches, with checks and balances that promote accountability. Professor DeLille, can you please walk me through some of the specific attributes in the U.S. judicial system that, broadly speaking, make it a fairer venue to resolve disputes compared to the Chinese court system?
Could you turn your mic on,
I'm sorry.
please?
There are, the contrasts are quite strong. The U.S. judicial system is, of course, open to pretty much anyone who has a cognizable claim, who has a claim that is covered by U.S. civil law, regardless of national origin, regardless of perhaps the motives behind the lawsuit. And U.S. courts have historically been quite insulated from political pressure. Of course, in every system, there is some link between politics and courts. Courts apply the laws adopted by political bodies, Congress in our case, and judges, of course, are selected even in our system by political processes, but the contrasts remain profound. One of the unfortunate developments in China in recent years has been a ratcheting up of the position that courts should take into account party policy and national interests and should be accountable to the party, should be subject to various forms of towing the line, as it were.
Well, let me stop you right there, because now we're starting to see some blending. Unfortunately, many of our judges have been under vicious attack from our executive branch and MAGA-loving members of Congress. When judges make a ruling Donald Trump doesn't like, our felon-in-chief takes to social media and he bashes and slanders that judge in a way that often leads to threats of violence from Trump's base. At the same time, his cronies in Congress race to file articles of impeachment against that judge without a legitimate shred of evidence of a crime, a high crime, or a misdemeanor.
The woman
Professor
behind the other
DeLille, you've
woman is
spoken about
fucking
the unique.
really
You were
sus right
speaking
now.
about the unique qualities of the judicial system of the United States that make it among the fairest systems in the world. But if we keep politicizing our courts, like threatening to punish or fanning the flames of violence against judges who dare rule against President Trump or his interest, how could this impact the impartiality and dependability of our courts in the long term?
That obviously is a concern. I've spent a great deal of time watching Chinese courts for the last 30 or 40 years, and I have seen progress and backward motion on this issue, and the form in which the erosion of the shoots of judicial independence and fair-mindedness of Chinese courts, and here the accomplishments were quite impressive for several decades, have been under threat because of the demand that courts take political concerns more directly into account. At one point, the president of the Supreme People's Court in China several years ago said that party policy was one of the principles, along with law, that should decide cases. We've seen judges face lifetime responsibility for so-called erroneous decisions.
I've noticed that
And we've also seen populist pressures
China
on
a
courts,
lot
people
more
in
now.
the streets expressing opposition to the way courts are ruling. Those are the hallmarks of threats to court independence and judicial independence. Stepping outside my lane as a Chinese law expert here, there are things that look to me disturbingly familiar going on in the United States.
Thank you. Some proposals I've heard from my colleagues during my tenure on this committee would diminish access to the U.S. court system, putting logistical and huge financial barriers in place for folks for trying to bring a lawsuit. This would mean effectively that only the wealthy or the well-connected could fully take advantage of our judicial system to resolve their disputes, and the little guys would be left behind. Professor DeLille, you are an expert in the civil justice system. Is it a good idea to make this system harder or exponentially more expensive to access? And if we start mandating that anyone who wants to bring a suit has to pay exorbitant fees to get in the door, how could that impact our impartial system of justice in this country?
I see my time has expired. May I answer?
Of course.
Okay. I think a cornerstone of the U.S. judicial system is fair access to justice. You should be able to go to court if you have a legitimate claim, and that applies to Chinese parties as well as U.S. parties. We've talked about how to screen that out. And I think there are many things either in the form of fees or in the form of creating barriers where you must prove the legitimacy of your claim. We talk about some of the disclosure requirements, which could chill and impede access. One of the things I think that U.S. courts, as I mentioned earlier, could do to deal with problematic issues from China is to take measures to dismiss claims before they proceed to a point being highly burdensome to parties. I would advocate that we look at that stage rather than closing off litigants wherever they're from before they can get through the courthouse door.
Thank you, and I yield back.
I thank the gentleman. If I could ask your indulgence for just one clarification. Professor, you mentioned political pressures and the nature in both countries. Briefly, can you simply say, is there any real comparison between our lifetime appointment federal judges and their likelihood to rule against the politics that may have gotten them the job and the Chinese government broadly?
I'm not sure there's a simple answer to that question. These are obviously matters of degree. I don't think either system makes this at a complete poll. As I suggested earlier, there had been welcome signs of progress in China, and there's been some but not complete backsliding. And I don't think, in my personal opinion, the U.S. Is where it has been or should be. And I think judges are human beings, and they worry about the way they are addressed and discussed by the politically powerful. That's probably something of a universal. I've certainly seen it in China.
Thank you. We now go to the gentleman from Wisconsin, Mr. Fitzgerald, for his questioning.
Thank you, Chairman. Professor Koo, the United States maintains a number of sanctions, export controls, or other measures to prevent certain individuals or entities affiliated with an adversarial nation
Who the fuck
from
is
gaining
this?
access to strategic technologies that are preventing equipment produced by such persons from being utilized in sensitive U.S. industries. A lot of times the sanctions include restrictions on certain property rights, and generally, however, these do not apply to a sanctioned entity's patent portfolio, meaning a sanctioned entity can continue to license its patents to U.S.-based companies or assert them in court.
You're still at work.
Some see the circumvention of sanctions and the subsidization of the activities of a sanctioned entity. So let me ask you,
he's still at work right
why
now.
have IP rights generally been excluded from other property rights restrictions under U.S. sanctions? And how could adversarial nations like China, which I know we've been talking about, take advantage of that loophole to the detriment of the U.S. innovation, or obviously the other thing discusses our national security?
Well, this is a complicated question. I agree that it's a strange thing. Obviously, it depends on how we design our sanctions regime, which this body, Congress, has designed, but also which is implemented by the Commerce Department. You could have sanctions that are much stricter and that are completely across the board, which in some cases would prevent even intellectual property licensing from occurring. I think that what's going on here is that people have, the Commerce Department or other entities essentially try to make compromises to account for different interests, right? The licensing is very valuable, right? It's very valuable for U.S. companies in many cases. To lose that revenue is a substantial and significant cost. So I think there's no legal reason why we cannot impose such rules across the board. I think it's more of a practical problem of balancing the different economic and political interests that we have here in the United States.
Thank you. Ms. De La Bruyere, you've written extensively on China's military-civil fusion, I guess you'd call it. And China has utilized companies like Huawei and ZTE to advance its Made in China 2025 initiative, or plan, I guess you'd call it. So Huawei held over 3,300 active U.S. patents in 2024, which is unbelievable to me. And it's generated the company hundreds of millions of dollars in annual licensing revenue. So when we allow some of these state-sponsored companies like Huawei to profit off the U.S. patent system, either through licensing agreements or injunctions, I mean, obviously we're subsidizing the continued kind of theft of American intellectual property and certainly helping to advance China's industrial agenda. What should Congress do about this, if anything, considering the limiting and licensing of asserting the U.S. patents while on certain national security-related sanctions lists?
I think one big challenge about fighting back against China's military-civil fusion strategy and general tech offensive is that we haven't, as a system, quite caught up to how advanced Beijing is, and therefore the leverage it acquires and the risks of not only China stealing technology, but also the U.S. becoming increasingly dependent on Chinese technology. And the way that alongside, say, U.S. investment into the Chinese tech program and more concrete U.S. tech partnerships with China end up fueling our adversary. And because we haven't recognized that, as a system, we haven't imposed restrictions on things like tech licensing from Chinese entities that are very real threats. And one potential avenue that the U.S. could take is that where we, through FIAC restrictions, for example, impose barriers on U.S. tech partnerships with China, those could also cover tech licensing, patent partnerships, and other IP agreements, beyond simply formal joint ventures, formal export of technology, et cetera.
Thank you. So right now I'm chairing the subcommittee
I
on
had no
antitrust,
idea this was all going
and
on
we've
with
been
China in the
investigating
first place.
kind of this cartel-like behavior in a number of U.S. industries where there's collusion. However, with foreign companies, you can have an American corporation working with someone in China, and it kind of falls into a different category. I was wondering if you had any thoughts on that.
Well, China's entire industrial, and we'll call it private sector, but it's not a private sector, is a cartel. Because fundamentally, Beijing and the Chinese Communist Party control them through incentive shaping and through directives, for lack of a better word. And that means that we should think of Chinese companies, including their outposts in the United States, as being arms of the Chinese system and colluding.
Thank you, Chairman. I'm out of time. I yield back.
I thank the gentleman. We now go to the ranking member of the full committee, the gentleman from Maryland, for 5 minutes.
Thank you, sir.
You're such a dish. You're such a bitch you can't turn it on.
Professor Dilo, you said that in China, the courts are supposed to decide according to party policy as well as the law, which is kind of amusing. I just finished reading Alexei Navalny's book, Patriot, where he said in Russia they talk about telephone justice to describe either the literal or metaphorical coercion that the government plays in the decision of particular cases. I'm wondering, Is this the same thing happening in academia in China, where scholars and deans are intimidated or coerced into deciding things according to official government edict? I ask, of course, because we're in a situation now where Donald Trump is trying to coerce colleges and universities, including Harvard, to accept his dictates with respect to student admissions, faculty hiring.
Was the orange man like Xi Jinping? Is fucking Donald Trump like Xi Jinping?
And curricular and academic content. And I'm wondering if that's something you'd find in China too.
The short answer is yes. Before turning that, I want to stress that in many cases in Chinese courts, and many Chinese judges and lawyers admirably apply the law fairly and play their roles the way one would hope they would play them, and sometimes do so against the kinds of pressures that have been long present in China and that seem increasingly present in the United States. I've been dealing with Chinese counterparts in academia, in law, political science, and other fields for many years.
Putin and Trump are butt buddies, but Putin is just like Xi Jinping. That proves it, ladies and gentlemen, because Putin and Xi Jinping like each other, so Trump's Putin's butt buddy. This is, what kind of circle jerk bullshit is this?
There have always been restrictions. The restrictions have gotten tighter. The ability to publish one's work, to express one's views, are definitely under pressure. The reach of the party and state into universities have shrunk what was once more capacious academic space. There have also been restrictions on Chinese scholars coming to the U.S., which has been a place where they are able to express ideas more freely and gather information. So all of those pressures are there. And as with courts, so this gets a little closer and more personal, what we're feeling now on American university campuses resonates in uncomfortable ways with what I've seen in China. That is the pressure. Not only the concern
resonates in uncomfortable ways. Do you mean setting fire to trash cans, barricading yourselves into buildings, harassing people so they can't just live their normal fucking lives, up to and actually including burning down actual buildings on campuses? Is that what you're talking about, sir?
Concern about whether you will harm your university by saying certain things, or the concern about the loss of the resources necessary to do research are real, as well as the interventions in what we hire and what we teach.
And are there attempts to impose government edicts and dictates on lawyers and on law firms?
Sure, I mean, I have this on 1.25 speed.
In the United States or in China?
In China.
In China. Yes, there are always restrictions on law firms and lawyers. Those who have represented dissidents or targets of repressive policies have faced threats to their law licenses. Chinese courts do have the significant discretion not to take cases that people might bring that are politically disfavored. So while this is not Soviet-style justice, and many cases are handled in perfectly ordinary ways, the more politically sensitive the case, the more party and state officials take interest in the case, the less likely it is to get to court or to be handled fairly once there.
I see. So I had the impression that there was very little judicial independence, but you're saying that in a lot of cases in China, the courts operate relatively free from direct governmental coercion or control.
It depends on the type of case, the type of court, and the type of parties, but the kinds of things that your question points to, the politically sensitive areas, things which would be deemed adverse to the interests or preferences, are one.
So because this isn't a typical situation, therefore we shouldn't have to worry about it, so China shouldn't just use legal lawfare against us to destroy us from within and take our shit. Are you fucking mentally retarded?
Where that is.
So we could very easily in America slide into that kind of system where the vast majority of contract tort property disputes are handled without any direct political interference. But when it comes to constitutional cases, the interpretation of executive powers or legislative powers, there could be much more political interference.
That kind of bifurcation is a hallmark of systems which have only made limited progress toward rule of law, rule by law, or that have backslid from robust democratic rule of law. It's one of the things that can be quite insidious. Ernst Frankl, a German scholar from many years ago, described the idea of a dual system, a dual state, where some cases are channeled through the ordinary legal process with fair process, and other cases, politically sensitive ones, face a very different regime wherein the preferences of those in power determine the outcome.
You know, I can't tell about this motherfucker's eyes. And sometimes it looks spot on. They're just going in different directions. Sometimes one looks lower than the other. I just can't tell. Maybe, is this dude like shape shifting, like face shifting right here in front of my face? I don't know what this is. It's fucking weird. It's throwing me off.
Can you explain the doctrine of true conflict, where American courts will sometimes not impose a U.S. law against a foreign entity if that entity's country has a law that's in true conflict with our laws?
Sure, a true conflict situation is where a party is subject to the laws of two countries, and that often happens with entities or individuals who work in China and here some border straddling activity. A true conflict is where you cannot comply with one state's laws without violating another. So to take one example from U.S. litigation, the vitamin C antitrust litigation, where the claim was that Chinese law required price collusion, and U.S. antitrust laws, of course, prohibited it. We're seeing more of this, and I think one of the areas where it may become quite serious is in China's anti-foreign sanctions law, where they will prohibit companies subject to Chinese jurisdiction from complying with U.S. sanctions, whereas those companies are obliged to comply with U.S. sanctions. Courts are going to have to face this, and they have to decide what to do. And the ordinary international legal principles rooted ultimately in comity are to decide which state has the stronger interest in to apply its law, or to refuse to apply foreign law that is repugnant to the public policy of the host jurisdiction.
Thank you. Yield back, Mr. Chair.
I thank the gentleman. We now go to the gentleman from Virginia, Mr. Klein, for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Chairman. I want to thank our witnesses for being here. As was stated, foreign entities invest substantial sums in litigation financing, potentially influencing court decisions to align with their interests. There's no greater actor than China engaged in this activity. Additionally, adversarial governments or corporations linked to them may use this strategy to shape legal outcomes in federal courts, advancing their geopolitical agendas. This practice raises national security concerns, particularly when it involves targeting sensitive military and commercial technologies or leveraging U.S. disclosure laws for strategic gain. I introduced the Protecting Our Courts from Foreign Manipulation Act, which would require disclosure from any foreign person or entity participating in civil litigation as a third-party litigation funder in U.S. federal courts, and ban sovereign wealth funds and foreign governments from participating in litigation finance as a third-party litigation funder, either directly or indirectly. Ms. de la Bruyere, your work has exposed how the CCP uses non-military, non-traditional tactics to gain advantage. Do you see strategic use of U.S. litigation as part of the CCP's toolkit, and would a bill like the one I explained help address that risk?
Use of litigation is absolutely a part of the CCP's toolkit. Beijing uses litigation to censor and intimidate its opponents, and there are cases of this abound, and they not only harm the direct opponents, but they also create a general silencing across
not over there.
The U.S., where it's simply too dangerous to speak about even known risks about Chinese entities because of litigation concerns. Beijing also uses targeted litigation to acquire intellectual property, including through the discovery process. And importantly, these efforts are in many cases funded by the Chinese government, both directly and indirectly, including through, for example, targeted subsidy programs that support Chinese companies dragging out these cases in U.S. courts.
Now, some would argue that adding transparency requirements to civil litigation, like identifying foreign state interests behind a party, might chill access to the courts or create an administrative burden. From a national security and economic standpoint, is there a real cost to doing nothing? Instead of, and how would you respond to critics who say greater transparency in litigation is unnecessary or even harmful?
I believe there's absolutely economic and a security cost to doing nothing. I also think that the U.S. has proven out a system evident in, for example, the FARA regime of having transparency requirements for foreign adversaries and foreign entities that allow the U.S. to protect its security in that direction without undermining the integrity of the U.S. legal system. And that's by having a targeted campaign that seeks just generally information on the activities of foreign agents and is, again, targeted at foreign adversaries.
Professor Koo, I introduced the bill to address how foreign adversaries, especially the Chinese Communist Party, may be using U.S. courts as a strategic tool. In your view, how real is the threat of foreign abuse of U.S. courts, and how might Congress strike the right balance between maintaining judicial openness and protecting national security?
I think the answer is kind of boring but obvious. Is disclosure. I think disclosure may create some administrative obstacles, but it doesn't prevent people from bringing cases. We want to allow foreign companies to feel like the U.S. judicial system is open to them. But there's really no reason why a foreign government really needs its rights protected in the same way. And so disclosing or maybe restricting foreign government involvement in these litigations, which they're not actually directly involved in, or through third-party litigation, or at least forcing disclosure, I think would go a long way. I don't think would burden people from bringing cases. And one last thing, I'll just note that it's very unclear that this could happen the other way. The U.S. companies could get involved in third-party litigation within China. So it puts U.S. companies at a disadvantage.
According to Westfleet Advisors' most recent report, third-party financing is behind over 30% of U.S. patent litigation. According to Bloomberg, more than one-half of U.S. patents are issued to foreign entities, and our country has no record of when or to whom they are transferred. Isn't this a national security and economic security risk?
For me, anyways, I think it is. And I think that as we point out, we require people to register as foreign agents in other contexts if you're have a blog or something, and you're promoting the views of the Chinese Communist Party. But actually, if you're funding a lawsuit, so it's not required to disclose. It's an odd, strange. We can distinguish between bad actors, or at least potentially bad actors, and just the average person who's involved in a lawsuit. I think our system has proven we can do that, and we can do that here as well.
Would we reduce well, I have 5 seconds left, so with that, I'll just yield back. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
No, there's a first. We're getting our time back. I thank the gentleman from Virginia, and I go to the gentlelady from North Carolina for her 5 minutes, Ms. Ross.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and the ranking member for holding this hearing, and thank you to all of our witnesses for testifying today. I am going to focus most of my questions for Mr. Mueller because we are bipartisan cheerleaders for North Carolina and our businesses. I also want to thank Mr. Mueller for your testimony, your idea.
You know when your thumb has those fucked up ridges and everything because you've been sitting in a pool too damn long? Next time you get that, look at a picture of Ross here and put it next to your thumb. Put eyeballs on it like a fucking TikTok filter. You have her. Why?
Is about what Congress can do better, but also for your service to this country, and in particular, at the beginning of your service working for USAID. We know how important foreign
her eyes look like a TikTok filter.
So you told us that Charlotte Pipe has filed multiple claims against Chinese litigants at the International Trade Commission, and that Chinese companies clearly have been dumping products at anti-competitive low prices. I participated with our North Carolina Secretary of State at a North Carolina Chamber event.
Why did this bitch choke on that word? Hold up. I'm gonna slow it the fuck down. What was that?
Charlotte Pipe has filed multiple claims against Chinese litigants at the International Trade Commission, and that Chinese companies clearly have been dumping.
That was a long fucking fumble for that. And that Chinese companies, like, you're getting to be my level. I mean, that's ridiculous to even say. That was actually worse than my level.
Products at anti-competitive low prices. I participated with our North Carolina Secretary of State at a North Carolina Chamber event, and it can actually just devastate a small company that doesn't have the resources that you do. How much time and money has your company invested in filing these multiple anti-dumping suits at the ITC?
Well, I mentioned previously in my testimony, it's almost $7 million of our own money. And another way to answer your question, I was hired by Charlotte Pipe and Foundry 23 years ago to run the marketing department, to be the vice president of marketing, which I did for a number of years. But in 2006, I took on a government affairs role and kind of wore 2 hats at Charlotte Pipe. In the last 5 years, I've been working exclusively on government affairs. So my time and salary has been dedicated to trying to work through these issues, both at the state level and at the federal level. And it continues to occupy. I joke that I shed half my job and I'm twice as busy. So.
And small businesses simply couldn't afford to have that kind of advocacy.
No, and in fact, you know, I also have represented the American Foundry Society. They have 1,000 corporate members, foundries throughout the United States, steel, aluminum, and cast iron. 80% of those foundries are small businesses, 100 people or less. They don't have the resources to fight like we do, and many of them are going out of business. 20 years ago, there were 2,000 foundries in America, and we're down to about 1,700. And these are vital for national security. You can't make tanks or planes or ships without foundries, steel, cast iron, aluminum foundries.
Well, thank you for representing your company and also those small businesses by extension. In 2017, Charlotte Pipe discovered that a Chinese manufacturer had stolen your name, trademark, and logo and was using it to sell unaffiliated products in East Asia. Since then, you filed trademark infringement claims in both China and Singapore. Can you tell us the status of those claims?
Yes, thank you for that question. I did testify on the Senate side before Senator Tillis in his intellectual property subcommittee on this topic. We only discovered by accident that China had stolen our brand identity and was going to market in Southeast Asia as Charlotte Pipe and Foundry. There's a building in Shanghai with our logo on the side. And a gentleman was passing out Charlotte Pipe business cards at a trade show in Singapore. That's how we discovered the theft. We filed to get our IP back in Singapore. We lost, but then won on appeal. We also had to hire a Chinese law firm at great expense to fight for our IP to get it back in China. And that is stalled in the courts of Beijing. No decision has been made, but the case has basically gone cold. We can't get any information.
So you mean to tell me they just straight up take your shit and then just you try to litigate it and they're like, no, go fuck yourself. I mean, that makes sense for China. I don't understand where you think there would be anything different, though. But that's fucking cold as fuck, ain't it?
From the Chinese government, from our Chinese law firm, as to the status of that case. And so we know they're still going to market on Chinese websites. You can still see that they're going to market as Charlotte Pipe.
Yeah, and just to, not to be too repetitive, but when I
Looks like Obama was actually referred over to the DOJ to stand for allegations of treason.
went to this North Carolina Chamber event, they brought in 2 small businesses that have experienced similar kinds of appropriation of their intellectual property. And those small businesses simply do not have anybody who can stand up for them. So they either have to move on or they have to, find some other way. And so I want to thank you for suggesting some very concrete bipartisan steps we can take to help right these wrongs. Thank you for your testimony. I yield back.
I thank the gentlelady. We now go to the gentleman from California, Mr. Kiley, for his questions.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you to our witnesses for this important discussion, which I think really covers 2 main areas. One being the CCP's evasion of policy and law and international rules in order to press its own advantage, and the second being its manipulation of our legal system in conjunction with its political control over its own to likewise benefited itself at the expense of the United States. I wanted to ask, first of all, Ms. De La Brie, did I get it right? Close? All right. If you could
no, there ain't
comment
no way.
on how this discussion relates to what's probably the most important issue when it comes to our competition with China, and that is the CC.
Nope. I'm sorry. Full remarks. Caroline Levitt briefs members of the media. DNI Tulsi Gabbard says she has officially referred Barack Obama to the DOJ for criminal prosecution. Let's go to her remarks then.
We have a special guest. Included that
I want to hear it.
selling it off allies of the president, including his own son, Donald Trump Jr., were disgustingly smeared as Russian assets. And some even had their lives destroyed because of this vicious lie. The president's first 2 years in office had this fake distraction hanging over it, and endless resources, time, and political capital were spent having to debunk these lies from the highest levels of our government. Now, nearly 10 years later, thanks to the declassification of documents by Director Gabbard, the truth has finally come to light. And this truth vindicates President Trump, his family, and his many allies and associates who were smeared with defamatory lies. President Trump was right from the beginning about all of this, and we are grateful that justice can be served. Now, we have even more damning evidence implicating those who tried to sabotage a duly elected president and did grave material harm to our republic. Thanks to additional important work done by CIA Director Ratcliffe, Committee Chairman Rick Crawford over the past few months, a newly declassified 2020 report prepared by the House Permanent Select Committee on Intelligence, which DNI Director Gabbard has declassified, found that the intel community did not have any direct information that Russian President Vladimir Putin wanted to help elect President Trump in 2016. And in fact, Russia was actively preparing for a Hillary Clinton victory. But at the unusual direction of Barack Obama at the time, the intel community published implausible intelligence suggesting otherwise. Why? To sabotage the incoming president. This is truly one of the greatest political scandals in American history. And reporters at legacy outlets, some of which are sitting in this room today, like the New York Times and the Washington Post, were ridiculously awarded Pulitzer Prizes for their perpetuation of this hoax. It's well past time for those awards to be stripped from the journalists who receive them. It is not journalism to propagate political disinformation in service of the Democrat Party and those in the intelligence community who hand over out of context and fake intelligence to push a false political narrative. I will now pass it over to the Director of National Intelligence, Tulsi Gabbard, to speak more about all of this, and then we will open it up for questions afterwards. Tulsi, thank you for being here.
Thank you very much. Good afternoon. At President Trump's direction and with the support and coordination with the House Intelligence Committee Chairman Rick Crawford, today we've released a declassified Oversight Majority Staff report that was produced in September of 2020. The stunning revelations that we are releasing today should be of concern to every American. This is not about Democrats or Republicans. This has to do with the integrity of our democratic republic and American voters having faith that the votes cast will count. There is irrefutable evidence that detail how President Obama and his national security team directed the creation of an intelligence community assessment that they knew was false. They knew it would.
Before she goes any further, I'm going to tell you this right here, right now. I will say, yes, it is fucking treason. Why a sitting fucking president of the United States attempted to subvert my fucking vote psychologically to bend to his fucking will. That was in 2016, you know, with Hillary Clinton and Donald Trump. A president made up some bullshit because he came into office to attack this motherfucker after spying on his campaign, after doing all this shit, after working with all this bullshit. Hey, check this out. He's working with the Russians. Work on that. Oh, we found nothing? Fucking bury that. We'll still run with it anyway. I want to make you vote for Hillary goddamn Clinton. Do I see that as psychological goddamn warfare? 100%. Barack Obama levied war on me as a fucking citizen, levies war against them. Them being the people of the United States of America, and a goddamn document talking about everything that we have every right to exercise. You cannot sit there and tell me that one little specific fucking clause means the federal government. You levy war against us, the citizens of the United States, while you hold an oath of office in any way. Like Sweeney said, you see how this can be weaponized? That's why I've been saying it every fucking time I say these things. But I'll be goddamned if you're going to take my vote from me and I'm just going to take it on the fucking chin and walk away. Just like in 2020.
Promote this contrived narrative that Russia interfered in the 2016 election to help President Trump win, selling it to the American people as though it were true. It wasn't. The report that we released today shows in great detail how they carried this out. They manufactured findings from shoddy sources. They suppressed evidence and credible intelligence that disproved their false.
Oh, and by the way, their whole reasoning and everything is treason, levying war. You usually have to be hostile. Okay, you show aggression, be hostile. I'm sorry, I think it's a fucking hostile act for you to take my fucking vote for me. I think it's a hostile act to overthrow this fucking government from within to install whatever the fuck president you want to keep your bullshit ass going. I think that's a hostile act against me as a citizen of this country. I don't care that nobody took up arms against me. I care of the fact that you actually thought, it doesn't matter what the fuck I say. It matters it doesn't matter what I say. It matters what you want. I find that to be a hostile action against me. I don't give a fuck that no violence was ever fucking committed. You sitting there screaming and yelling and hooping and hollering about goddamn Trump doing the same fucking thing. But yet Obama, the first black president, yeah, it's fine. He does it, right? That can't be treason. But if Trump did the exact same thing, y'all motherfuckers be hanging him from the fucking rooftops. Let's be honest here. What the fuck are y'all thinking? Just because a black man does it, it's okay? Is that your fucking reasoning? Because that's sick.
Claims they disobeyed traditional tradecraft intelligence community standards and withheld the truth from the American people. In doing so, they conspired to subvert the will of the American people who elected Donald Trump in that election in November of 2016. They worked with their partners in the media to promote this lie, ultimately to undermine the legitimacy of President Trump and launching what would be a years-long coup against him and his administration. We're here today because the American people deserve the truth, they deserve accountability, and they deserve justice. The records that we released on Friday that were ODNI records Senator Chuck Grassley's release on Monday of what is known as the Clinton Annex, which was an appendix to the Department of Justice Office of Inspector General's 2018 report, as well as the House Intelligence Committee's majority oversight report that we're releasing today, all come back to and confirm the same report. There was a gross politicization and manipulation of intelligence by the Obama administration intended to delegitimize President Trump even before he was inaugurated, ultimately usurping the will of the American people.
Yes.
I'm going to go over the key findings from the House Intelligence
I would say you levied psychological warfare against me for that
claims
shit.
that were made by an intelligence community assessment ordered by President Obama and published in January of 2017.
Just like thousands of black people being
Putin's
killed in the
principal
streets.
interests relating to the 2016 election were to undermine faith in the U.S. democratic process, not show any preference of a certain candidate. In fact, this report shows Putin held back from leaking compromising material on Hillary Clinton prior to the election, instead planning to release it after the election to weaken what Moscow viewed as an inevitable Clinton presidency.
They actually tried to help Clinton. That's the fucking amazing part about it. They actually tried to help Clinton. They withheld damning fucking evidence against Hillary Clinton because they were going to release it after they thought Hillary Clinton was going to be president. And, oh, that's helping? That's helping Donald Trump? How the fuck did that help Donald Trump?
In the January 2017 intelligence community assessment that President Obama ordered, John Brennan, who was CIA director at the time, and the intelligence community intentionally suppressed intelligence that showed Putin was saving the most damaging material that he had in his possession about Hillary Clinton until after her potential and likely victory.
How does that help Trump?
The report goes into great detail about the information that Russia and Putin had on Hillary Clinton, which included possible criminal acts like secret meetings with multiple named U.S. religious organizations in which State Department officials offered in exchange for supporting.
Are we talking about some of that gross shit going on? Is that the secret meetings you're talking about, ma'am? Because we need to know about that, too. This woman, she is the devil incarnate.
Secretary Clinton's campaign for the presidency,
Not Tulsi,
significant
what up,
increases
Steve?
in financing from the State Department. They also had documents that showed the patronage of the State Department to State Department employees who would go and support Hillary Clinton's presidential campaign. There were high-level DNC emails that detailed evidence of Hillary's, quote, psycho-emotional problems, uncontrolled fits of anger, aggression, and cheerfulness, and that then Secretary Clinton was allegedly on a daily regimen of heavy tranquilizers. Then CIA Director Brennan and the intelligence community mischaracterized intelligence and relied on dubious substandard sources to create a contrived false narrative that Putin developed a quote-unquote clear preference for Trump. Brennan and the IC misled lawmakers by referencing the debunked Steele dossier to assess quote-unquote Russia's plans and intentions, falsely suggesting that this dossier had intelligence value when he knew that it was discredited. The intelligence community excluded significant intelligence and ignored or selectively quoted reliable intelligence that contradicted the intelligence community assessment's key findings on Putin's alleged support for Trump. Including this intelligence reporting would have exposed the ICA's claim as implausible, if not ridiculous. The intelligence community assessment omitted reliably sourced information, such as how some Russian intelligence officials were quote-unquote planning for candidate Hillary Clinton's victory, while others assessed.
I bet you every single motherfucker that ever thought or called her or even hinted at her being a Russian asset is shitting their fucking pants right now.
Neither Trump nor Clinton would respect Russia's interests.
Yeah, she did. And she was only fined, what was it, like 27,000 or something for that?
Friday, multiple intelligence community assessments released in the months leading up to the November 2016 election concluded that Russia had neither the intent nor capability to impact the outcome of the U.S. election. On December 5th of 2016, the FBI and ODNI gave the House Intelligence Committee its first post-election classified briefing,
Oh, hell
in which
yeah. I
there was
remember
no
Clapper.
mention of Putin aspiring to elect Trump by either agency. The Presidential Daily Brief, drafted on December 8th of 2016, stated that no Russian or criminal actors impacted vote counts. This document was pulled just hours before it was to be published due to quote-unquote new guidance. If it had been published, it would have been briefed to both President Obama and President-elect Donald Trump. On December 9th, 2016, a National Security Council meeting was called to gather President Obama's senior national security officials, which included CIA Director Brennan, then Obama DNI James Clapper, Susan Rice, and others. Following that secret meeting, DNI Clapper's assistant sent an email to the intelligence community with the subject line, POTUS tasking on Russia election meddling, tasking ODNI leaders to create a new assessment per the president's request. The House Intelligence Committee Oversight Report that we released today reveals that, quote, unlike routine intelligence community analysis, the intelligence community assessment was a high-profile product ordered by the President, President Obama. It directed senior intelligence community agency heads and created an intelligence community assessment limited to just 5 analysts, using one principal drafter. This is not something that occurs in the normal path of producing an intelligence community assessment that reflects the views across the intelligence community. The production of this intelligence community assessment was subject to unusual directives directly from the president and senior political appointees, especially the former director of the CIA, John Brennan. The House Intelligence Committee Oversight Report also shows how later that same day, on December 9th, Brennan ordered the publication.
Rick, I'm telling you, man, when they tried to call her a Russian asset, she's like, I'm using that to go fuck you. And she is. This is the proverbial ripping the balls off the fucking beast right here. They're just like, you're a Russian asset. She said, Russian my fucking ass. You played along with it.
Of quote-unquote substandard reporting on Russian activities, which had previously been withheld from publication of prior assessments because the information was judged, quote, to have not met long-standing publication standards. Some of the information later used in the Obama-ordered assessment over the objections of veteran CIA officers was, quote-unquote, unclear or from unknown sources.
I'm going to bring it full screen.
The Intelligence Committee's oversight report reveals that CIA Director Brennan overruled senior CIA officers who challenged the Obama-ordered intelligence assessment, stating, quote, we don't have direct information that Putin wanted to get Trump elected. Yet, the Obama-directed assessment was published on January 6, 2017, which explicitly stated, quote, we assess Putin and the Russian government aspired to help President-elect Trump's election chances when possible by discrediting Secretary Clinton and publicly contrasting her.
You know what the whole thing about this is? With Putin, he was like, okay, I got bullshit on Clinton. If she becomes president, which is likely she will because that's what they're saying. If she becomes president, I got this bullshit. It's going to fuck this person up. However, my best asset, or my best bet would be Trump because he seems rational. The motherfucker is, he's willing to listen. He's willing to talk. He's willing to sit down and have a real conversation. So I like Trump. That would be the entire fucking situation that Putin would ever have about this situation. But they manufactured all of it, to run with. Even Tulsi fucking Gabbard is a fucking Russian asset. Ma'am, I tip my fucking hat to you. This is fucking amazing.
Unfavorably to him. End of quote. The CIA and FBI, then led by John Brennan and James Comey,
even if it goes nowhere, at least she fucking did it.
While the NSA expressed moderate confidence. Yet, as the report we released today shows, the ICA, the Intelligence Community Assessment, did not cite any report where Putin indicated helping Trump win was an objective. The opposite is true. With regards to the Steele dossier, we now know that one of the source documents that the Obama administration used in the creation of this intelligence assessment in January of 2017 was none other than the discredited, unverified Steele dossier. The House Intel report states, quote,
oh no, this is going to go everywhere.
by then CIA Director
Because it's going to be
Brennan
like, you got to be at war. You got to live at war. This ain't a thing. Watch, play the...
The dossier was referenced.
I'm sorry, man. I'll roll it back so you can speak. No, they're going to say that. They're going to be like, you got to be at war. You got to be... They'll play the dumbest fucking reasoning for all of this shit. And when you get down into the minute details, and yes, I actually fucking have, just like that's on Sean Patrick Dude or whatever. Oh, you saw these? Could you actually say it would rise to that level? Fuck yes. 100% as a U.S. citizen, for you to take my fucking vote and say, go fuck yourself because we want this person. You levied war against me. The fact that you tried to do it psychologically before you actually did it physically in 2020 is even fucking worse. The fact that you tried to play with me, you lied to me 100%. You said, or fucking, what was it? Russian hookers pissed on the motherfucker or some shit like that? I forget what the fuck the piss claim was. You even went that goddamn far to discredit this son of a bitch so everybody would not vote for him. And it was all based on fucking lies. Yes, that is psychological warfare, and the fact that the President of the United States of America okayed that shit against American citizens would be levying war against me as a citizen because you want to perverse my fucking vote, voting your ways so you can continue your bullshit, effectively changing our government into whatever the fuck you want it to be instead of a constitutional republic that it is. Sorry, that is fucking treason. Eat a dick. I'm sorry. Now, I will roll it back for you, Tulsi.
Unverified Steele dossier. The House Intel report states, quote, contradicting public claims by then CIA Director Brennan that the dossier was not in any way incorporated into this intelligence assessment. The dossier was referenced in the intelligence assessment's main body text and further detailed in a 2-page assessment annex. John Brennan lied, and he denied using this dossier in this intelligence assessment that President Obama ordered because he knew it was discredited. It was a politically motivated, manufactured document. He directed senior CIA officials to use it anyway. CIA officer told the House Intelligence Committee staff as they investigated this, quote, the director of the CIA, John Brennan, refused to remove it, and when confronted with the dossier's many flaws, responded, quote, yes, but doesn't it ring true? Even the bipartisan Senate Select Committee on Intelligence report published in 2020 criticized the FBI's handling of the Steele dossier, noting its completely unverified nature and purposeful sidestepping of intelligence community procedures in its use. Now, President Obama, Hillary Clinton, John Brennan, James Clapper, James Comey, and
I
others,
just killed myself back here,
including their mouthpieces in the media, knowingly lied as they repeated the contrived narrative that was created in this January 2017 intelligence community assessment with high confidence as though it were fact. John Brennan, as CIA director, stated in a memo to his agency staff in December of 2016, saying, quote, there is strong consensus among us on the scope, nature, and intent of Russian interference in our presidential election. This was reported by NBC News, confirming that Brennan, along with James Clapper and James Comey, agreed with the CIA's assessment that Russia intervened to help Trump win the presidency. As Obama's Director of National Intelligence, James Clapper was tasked with overseeing the creation of this assessment in January of 2017 by President Obama, and he expressed confidence in its findings. In a 2018 interview with the Harvard Gazette, he talked about how he provided Trump with the same classified assessment that President Obama received, which included the high confidence judgment that Putin directly ordered the hacking and election interference.
I need to pause you again. And I want you all to put this into perspective right now. I have a feeling I know what's going to cause a big derailment of this. Y'all remember the NDAA fact. Allowed propaganda in the media. Didn't matter if you lied. If propaganda had allowed it, right? I think that might be a hurdle. And it's going to bring it up yet again, though. It's interesting to see if that's going to come up.
Clapper then went on to add, I think they, the Russians, actually influenced the outcome. This is a brief summary of the details that you'll find within the House Majority Staff's report in their investigation into the Obama-directed January 2017 Intelligence Community Assessment. That leads us to the very same conclusion that we announced in the release of our documents on Friday. The implications of this are far-reaching and have to do with the integrity of our democratic republic. It has to do with an outgoing president taking action to manufacture intelligence.
Ah, come on, be the one. You know how they played down the fact that Obama was spying on Trump,
what would be a
and how they didn't even give out that information that it was found out to be true.
Thank you.
Thank you, Tulsi. And we do want to take questions on this topic while the director has time for this topic. She will leave. I'm happy to take questions on other matters after that. But if anyone has questions for Director Gabbard, you're welcome to ask them. We'll start with our new media seat as always. Emily, go ahead.
Ma'am, why do you have the biggest balls in the fucking universe?
Thank you. And Director Gabbard, this one is for you. Do you believe that any of this new information implicates former President Obama in criminal behavior?
We have referred and will continue to refer all of these documents to the Department of Justice and the FBI to investigate the criminal implications of this.
For even former President Obama?
Correct. The evidence that we have found and that we have released directly point to President Obama leading the manufacture.
I'm sorry. If I was in that new media seat right there, that would be my question. Ma'am, with every bit of fucking respect I could ever muster in my lifetime, why do you have the biggest balls in the universe? Because this is amazing.
Of this intelligence assessment. There are multiple pieces of evidence and intelligence that confirm that fact.
Ed, go ahead.
Director Gabbard, thank you. So just to, two questions, but to begin on that. The president yesterday, you've inferred that the former president helped lead a coup.
Maybe Obama did have his third fucking term.
President Obama is guilty of treason.
I'm leaving the criminal charges to the Department of Justice. I am not an attorney, but as I've said previously, when you look at the intent behind creating a fake manufactured intelligence document that directly contradicts multiple assessments that were created by the intelligence community, the expressed intent and what followed afterward can only be described as a years-long coup and a treasonous conspiracy against the American people.
Yes, because those have taken an oath of office attempted to subvert my motherfucking vote to install whatever bullshit they wanted into this fucking country to take it over from within. Yes. A small group of people did levy war against me in an attempt to overthrow the government. They used treason to cover up sedition. It's fucking amazing how this is fucking playing out. I've been telling y'all.
Our republic and an attempt to undermine President Trump's administration.
The Senate Intelligence Committee spent several years looking into this and unanimously agreed in a bipartisan fashion. Secretary of State Rubio was a member
Drew
of the
Biden.
committee.
Yes.
That there was no political interference.
Biden was all auto pen. There was no way in shape or form that Obama should have popped up anyway. Or that should have popped up at all. If you're running a shadow government, he did say, hey, I'm sitting in sweatpants in my basement and I just got an earpiece in talking to somebody. How the fuck do you explain chewing on the Shabbat pressure, bad of calf care, next nail rescent? How the fuck do you explain all those gaffes? He might have been a puppet. That right-wing conspiracy theory, again, might be actually fucking true.
There was a years-long Justice Department investigation into this as well that also concluded no political interference. So help us from a 50,000-foot level explain.
Let's not forget
what do you now
AutoPen.
have that refutes those two conclusions?
I will.
And why does this motherfucker right here, who's sitting right next to the dude, why does he look like the cop from the fucking Terminator 2 movie? That's a spitting goddamn image. The little shape-shifting liquid metal dude.
Encourage you, in my role as the Director of National Intelligence, my job, again, as I said when I came into this role, was to make sure that we are telling the truth.
Can someone ask why Mueller found also nothing just Russian influence but these memos from the CIA? Why? Payoff? Yes. What up, Adam?
To the American people, and that we are ensuring that the intelligence community is not being politicized. So I'm not asking you to take my word for it. I'm asking you and the media to conduct honest journalism and the American people to see for yourself in the documents that we've released now, close to 200 pages, that point in multiple references, multiple examples, to include comments that have been made by senior intelligence professionals who are some still working within these agencies today that confirm the conclusions that we have drawn, that President Obama directed an intelligence community assessment to be created to further this contrived false narrative that ultimately led to a years-long coup to try to undermine President Trump's presidency.
And it's your belief that those two previous investigations missed that or covered it up?
I'm telling you to look at the evidence. Look at the evidence, and you will know the truth.
John.
Thanks, Caroline. Thanks, Director Gabbard. You declassified these documents, if I'm not mistaken, Friday of last week, correct?
We released them on Friday of last week, the first tranche, yes.
This isn't the first time that President Trump has been president of the United States. He was president from 2017 to 2021. Couldn't the prior DNI under President Trump have declassified these documents? And why didn't that DNI do that at that time?
I can't speak to what happened there. There were several DNIs under the first Trump administration. President Trump faced many challenges from those who were working in the government who sought to undermine his presidency. That's been clearly detailed. What I can speak to is the fact that,
except for the fact that every single person involved an oath of office. That's what I'm saying. It's sedition if I do it because I did not take an oath of office. These motherfuckers did. Therefore, it is treason.
This was one of the first things that we started to investigate here within this Trump administration and have released the results.
Just like the right to bear arms, they decided, hey, look, this kind of warfare is going to change. We're never going to be muskets forever. There's going to be something beyond that. The right to bear arms. This is why it says levy war instead of take up arms against. Levy war against them. They knew warfare changes. Motherfucker, you're talking about these are the same people that were popping out of right behind fucking trees as the British were marching along in single fucking file, which is clearly a violation of the warfare time frame that they had at that point. We did that. We started that. We started guerrilla warfare on the mainstream fucking level because that's what our military was designed on, because it's a tactic that fucking works. We committed what people would say would be war crimes when we seceded from Britain. But I'll be goddamned if a sitting president of the United States of America takes my fucking vote away from me to install whatever the fuck he wants to. There is a huge fucking difference in breaking away because of 3% tax on tea, which is major back then, but and a sitting goddamn president trying to take my fucking vote from me. I'm sorry. You can go fuck yourself. You levied psychological warfare against me as a sitting president.
On the conclusion of our investigation.
And then my second question has to do with what intelligence agencies around the world have said about Russia that they have tried to influence elections in the United States, in France, in Germany, in the UK. Do you disagree with that? Do you believe that Russia is a bad actor as it relates to trying to influence elections?
I'll point back to the intelligence that President Trump has ordered declassified, that we have declassified and released, that the intelligence reflects Russia's motives were to try to sow discord and chaos within the U.S. election, which is a clear distinction from showing a preference for or against a specific candidate, which is what the Obama manufactured intelligence document alleges, that Russia preferred Donald Trump and tried to help Donald Trump get elected. Again, going back to the most important point here, with the intent to undermine the legitimacy of President Trump's election and therefore subvert the will of the American people who chose to send him to the White House.
Reagan.
Thanks, Caroline. Director Gabbard, Reagan Reese with the Daily Caller. You laid out that the documents revealed that the Obama administration did not publish a December 2016 presidential daily briefing that demonstrated that Russia did not steal the election. Trump was receiving these briefings at the time because he was president-elect. Are you of the view that that information was kept out of the briefing because then President-elect Donald Trump would have seen it?
I don't have any documents that speak to exactly what the new guidance was that was given as the reason for pulling that document, which, by the way, still has never been published until we released it last week, Friday. One could assume that they didn't want President Trump to see a document that came from the intelligence community that would contradict the Russia hoax narrative that began through the Hillary Clinton campaign with the Steele dossier.
One more. Maybe either for you or Caroline. The president said yesterday that Obama committed treason. Do you or the White House believe that the Supreme Court's immunity decision protects Obama from prosecution?
Look, I can speak to the president's feelings on this matter. He spoke to all of you yesterday in the Oval Office, but I also spoke to him about this morning. And he wants to see all those who perpetuated this fraud against our country, who betrayed our country and the Constitution, to be thoroughly investigated and held accountable. And it's been...
I told you. It's just beginning.
10 years of this, and I would just add, based on everything the director has said and declassified, all of you in this room should go through it and take a look at this report and review the intelligence, because unfortunately that hasn't happened. And many of the people who perpetuated this hoax, Clapper, Andy McCabe, James Comey, and many others, have been hired by major networks in this room to go on television and continue to spew these lies, knowing that they are lies. And if you all recall, just flashback to 2016 and the years after, the entire Trump one presidency was embroiled.
Let's not forget, he took those documents to preserve his fucking legacy to pass on to his fucking children. That's why he had them. Let's not forget that. His legacy was what he was doing in the Senate for 50 fucking years, and then he became president of the United States and then died from cancer.
In this scandal that was perpetuated by the Democrat Party. And you had major Democrat Party officials in this city, namely Adam Schiff, Hillary Clinton, Elizabeth Warren, who went on television and told the American people Donald Trump is an asset of Russia. It was a lie. They always knew it. Hillary Clinton herself said that President Trump would be a puppet for Putin. Senator Tim Kaine at the time called President Trump Vladimir Putin's defense lawyer. Adam Schiff stated, and one of the worst things a lawmaker can do is to tell the American people, I know something you don't know, it's just classified and I can't tell you. And that's what he said. I can tell you that the case is more than that. I can't go into the particulars, but there is more than circumstantial evidence now. And not enough people in this room, not enough journalists in this country pushed Adam Schiff to say, what are you talking about? What evidence do you have? Everybody just ran with the lies, and it led to impeachments. It led to the division of our country. Unfortunately, so many Americans, from listening to outlets in this room, believed in these lies. And it's a complete...
She's 100% correct. That is psychological warfare, ladies and gentlemen. Divide the people based on whatever the fuck reality I make up. And those that actually live in reality as we see it, we're still like, what the fuck? Where did this come from? What is this? Who are you? Why are you doing this? This is why. Levy's psychological warfare. Come on. These motherfuckers were smart when they founded this shit. This is why some laws are vague, and this is why some laws are on fucking point. Even to this day, we understand that. Levy's war? Okay. The motherfucker didn't pick up a rifle towards me. But he tried to take away my goddamn vote. He tried to make me think whatever the fuck he wanted me to think so he could install whatever the fuck he wanted to install. A president should never be able to allowed to do that because, I'm sorry, isn't that what they're saying Trump is doing right now? Yet there is absolutely nothing other than the fact that shows like this exist, shows like the internet are taking the fuck off in every way, left, right, and the center, because we're done with mainstream media bullshit. We're hearing this and we're all reacting to this in real fucking time together. This is absolutely goddamn 100% treason to me. There ain't no fucking way you're going to sit there and tell me a sitting president levied psychological warfare against me, all a goddamn lie, backed by our fucking government, to make you think one way to support whatever agenda they wanted to push. I'm sorry, there's no way you can tell me that that ain't levying war against me when you took an oath to defend the Constitution and this fucking country being a sitting goddamn president. Y'all talking about how even the president isn't above the law, right? So apparently allowing propaganda into our system and straight up lying about everybody to convince you to vote his way. He's not somehow levying psychological warfare against me. Like, I don't understand how that would not be a clue in anybody's brain. Hey, something's a little bit fucked up. Even the president's lying about this shit. Something's going to fuck on. Maybe we need to take a look into this. And then he gets in. Obstruction after obstruction after obstruction after obstruction happens. Y'all keep fucking lying about this son of a bitch. And 2020 happens. Holy shit. The TikTok thing. The fucking Chinese thing. How many other motherfucking stories can you find about people being arrested for election fraud in 2020? Okay, cool. You got a goddamn point for a standalone complex. But when it's encouraged and free thought into your fucking head by your elected officials, I'm sorry, that's called sedition. But because they gave an oath of office to defend the Constitution, to defend this country, to defend its people within, in any way you want to slice it, because they gave an oath, doing this kind of shit, you levy war against me as a citizen, and you give aid and comfort to the enemies of the United States because they're trying to take us over from within. I'm sorry, how is that not fucking treason? By its very definition. That's my argument.
Scam, and it's a scandal, and the president wants to see accountability for that. Phil.
Thank you. Question for Director Gabbard. A spokesperson for former President Obama said in a statement earlier this week, quote, "Nothing in the documents issued last week undercuts the widely accepted conclusion that Russia worked to influence the 2016 election, but did not
what up, Rob?
any votes." How do you respond to critics like former President Obama and also
Y'all need to track that back, because I just made a strong ass argument as to why she is correct.
Allegations of actual hacking of voter machines and allegations of interference generally?
I think it's a disservice to the American people that former President Obama's office and others who are criticizing the transparency that is being delivered by releasing these documents. They are doing a disservice to the American people and trying to deflect away from their culpability in what is a historic scandal and negative action towards the American people and our democratic republic. The answer to that statement can very clearly be found throughout all of the documents that we have released. Again, showing that Russia has took action to try to sow discord in the election, but showed no preference for or against any singular candidate.
You've long been an opponent of weaponization in government. How do you respond to criticism that referring Obama administration officials and even potentially the former president is just more weaponization and this is a potential race to the bottom?
I think that's a very disrespectful attack on the American people who deserve the truth. They deserve to have faith and trust in the integrity of our democratic republic, which has been undermined by President Obama through his direction of this manufactured fake intelligence document,
y'all go check out Robert
that it was
Gouveia.
filled with lies, and knowing that.
Sorry, ma'am, I'm gonna have to cut you again. Y'all go check out Robert Gouveia over there. I'm actually gonna go ahead and put that link in the Rumble side or the YouTube side as well. But yeah, if you haven't already, go over there and check that man out. He actually goes through court documents, breaks it down, actually makes you understand on a human level words and things like that, and he follows along nicely with all of it. It's the main points of everything to keep you up to speed. I have actually learned a lot legally from him, and I still, brother, I'm serious. I want to have this conversation with you. I think you, me, Sweeney, and Davey for the brevity, but I think it would be an honest, obvious, and legal standpoints from federal and how you perceive it, from a citizen standpoint, the way I perceive it. Let's talk about this. Let's break it down because I think that'd be awesome. We do it members only, so it's not like cloud chasing or anything, you know. But hey, we need to talk about it. I'm sorry, that kind of took away my connection with this. I gotta
by
bring
President Obama through his direction of this manufactured fake intelligence document, knowing that it was filled with lies and knowing that it would and could then be used for all of the actions that came after.
Carolyn, and I would just add, there needs to be accountability for that weaponization, Phil, that we've seen. And no one has been a victim of the weaponized government more than President Trump, not just because of this political scandal. You all recall his house was raided. So I think, you know, it's very disingenuous for people to say.
And let's track that the fuck back too, because the FBI went in February of that year demanding the documents. They found these documents. They told him, hey, this can't be out in the open. So they shoved him in a bathroom. Looks like documents in the shitter to me, right? Hold up. Check this out. They told him, hey, you got to lock this shit the fuck up. Trump's like, okay, cool. How about you put your own damn lock on it so that way I have no access to that? And they're like, cool. That sounds fucking smart. They lock the fucking door. Months later, raid this motherfucker saying that those documents were the ones that he was trying to hide, that FBI agents earlier in the fucking year had actually put into that room and locked them goddamn selves. It was fucking amazingly stupid how bad that was.
How dare they speak of former President Obama about this based on evidence and based on intelligence when the former president of the United States, Donald Trump's home was raided, when he was forced to sit in a Manhattan courtroom and many other courtrooms across the country for crimes he never committed, when he was impeached and indicted, and the entire country witnessed that. That's the weaponization of justice. Now the president is back because the American people see the truth. Nearly 80 million Americans reelected him back to this office, and he believes that we need to have justice and accountability. And I think the nearly 80 million Americans who reelected him agree with that. Caitlin.
Thank you, Caroline. Two questions for Director Gabbard just on this. Director Gabbard, you referenced the past intelligence reports and assessments on this, including that 2017 one that was signed off, as Ed noted, by every Republican on the Senate Intelligence Community, including the acting chair of the time, now Secretary of State Marco Rubio, who said in a statement that they did not find any evidence of Russian collusion, but they did find, however, is very troubling, and they found irrefutable evidence of Russian meddling. One, are you saying that he's wrong in that statement that he made then? And secondly, what would you say to people who believe that you're only releasing these documents now to improve your standing with the president after he said that your intelligence assessments were wrong?
Well, first I want to correct something that you
I knew that was going to be a thing. I knew that fucking bitch would try to use that as a divide. I can't stand Caitlin Collins for the same damn reason I can't stand that other bitch. They both have square faces. For some reason, that sets me off. I don't know why. I call it misogynistic. I don't give a shit. I'm just saying, they got square, like the only round part is the top of their heads. It bothers me. It gets me. But that's why I can't really look at her while she's speaking. But the whole thing of, despite the fact that Trump said your intelligence was wrong, that's what fucking got me. Because they tried to play it up like Tulsi had said something that she actually didn't fucking say. And Trump's like, oh, is that what she said? And they're like, yeah, well, then she's wrong. And this is, oh my God.
One, are you saying that he's wrong in that statement that he made then? And secondly, what would you say to people who believe that you're only releasing these documents now to improve your standing with the president after he said that your intelligence assessments were wrong?
The only people that are saying that, Caitlin, is your square face, Deluxe Murphy. What the fuck? Dylan Mulvaney. See, D&M worked. Dylan Mulvaney looking at... I'm serious. Have you ever seen Dylan Mulvaney and Caitlin Collins in the same place? I haven't either.
Well, first I want to correct something that you stated, which was citing the Senate Intelligence Committee's report as being one of the same. I think you said the intelligence community. The Senate Intelligence Committee has a very different function than the Office of the Director of National Intelligence. The evidence and the intelligence that has been declassified and released is irrefutable. I'm going to let Caroline speak to Secretary Rubio.
I'll speak to both questions. First, on Secretary Rubio.
All of this. Tulsi, why are you releasing it? Are you releasing it because there's a poll out there that say people hate you? That was the most cattiest fucking... I'm serious. You can't hate the fucking media enough. You can't hate the fucking media enough. You got a chance to ask the Director of National Intelligence a question, and one of your questions is, bitch, are you releasing this because people hate you? When absolutely nobody's got a problem with Tulsi Gabbard yet, it was a little bit rough in some of them, but she had the best fucking confirmation hearing. I'm serious. The first female president will come from the Republican Party, and you're staring at the woman.
He put out a statement in 2020 following that Senate Intelligence Committee report, and he said what they found is troubling. We found irrefutable evidence of Russian meddling, which the Director of National Intelligence just confirmed for all of you, that Russia was trying to sow distrust and chaos. But what's the outrage in this that Secretary Rubio did not say at the time, the Democrats were saying at the time, is the fact that the intelligence community was concocting this narrative that the president colluded with the Russians, that the president's son was holding secret meetings with the Russians. All of these lies that were never true. And he also said at that time, we discovered deeply troubling actions taken by the FBI under Comey, particularly their...
Let's not forget, Caitlin Collins herself ran on that shit. She came up on that shit. That was her defining fucking moment where she was just like, Russia, 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 Russia. And this bitch has every bit of her fucking fame crumbling right in front of her. This is epically great.
Their acceptance and willingness to rely on the Steele dossier without verifying its methodology or sourcing. The Steele dossier that many outlets in this room ran as the gospel truth, and it was cooked up and paid for by the Clinton campaign. As for your second question, Caitlin, I think, who is saying that she would release this to try to boost her standing with the president? Who has said that?
Well, the president has publicly undermined her when it came to Iran. He said she was...
Because if that's what she said, then she's wrong. But that's not what she said, right? Squareface Mulvaney.
wrong. He told me that she didn't know what she was talking about. That was on Air Force One
No,
on camera.
the only people who are suggesting that the Director of National Intelligence would release evidence to try to boost her standing with the president are the people in this room who constantly try to sow distrust and chaos amongst the president's cabinet. And it is not.
I'm telling you right now, the only person you do not have to worry about in the federal government right now is that woman behind you. She just sat here and took the slings and arrows of the entire federal government, which start. Okay, let's just be honest. The pressure didn't start then. But the actual pressure started when she nuked Kamala Harris in the goddamn debate. Her career went downhill quick. She was on fast track. Like I said, you're talking about the first woman president. You're staring at her. She was on fast track to be. The first woman president was supposed to be Hillary Clinton, but she was on the fast track to actually go after Hillary fucking Clinton. She stood up and said, nah, I ain't following this shit. Look, bitch, you held people after their sentencing for free labor to fight wildfires. Don't talk to me about the rule of law. I'm a goddamn lieutenant colonel. That ended her political career. And after that, every time this woman has shown the fuck up, she has been spot the fuck on. This is why I approve of this woman. And this is why I say she will be the next, not the next, but she will be the first woman fucking president. And it will come from the Republican goddamn party, because the Democrat Party, which all she said is, this shit ain't fucking right, and they literally destroyed her for. She is one of the very few that are really fucking real in their flips, and you can tell straight up because this woman has never fucking missed. Every time she has popped up and said something publicly, she has been right on. I can make an argument for this. As a citizen, levies war against them. It means the citizens of this country. And a founding fucking document that talks about every bit of our rights and freedoms, the things we can do unabated. You can't sit there and tell me that levies war against them. Means the government. My enemies are the enemies of the United States of America. Not the government's enemies. My enemies. Whoever I deem, whoever we collectively deem is our enemies, is our enemies. That's why it was written into the Constitution. Not that, but it is written into the Constitution, and that's one of the fucking reasons that it was. Because my enemies, not theirs. The Constitution was everything about what we are supposed to be able to do and say and how we live our lives. Unabated, right? So why was that written in there specifically for that? Levies war against them as the citizens, not the government. The government can tell you, hey, these are your foreign enemies, and we can believe it or not. But our enemies are who we decide.
Working. I will just answer your question directly. I am with the President of the United States every day. He has the utmost confidence in Director Gabbard. He always has. He continues to. And that is true of his entire cabinet, who is all working as one team to deliver on the promises this president made. Does anyone else have questions for Director Gabbard? And then we'll turn it over to a couple other questions. Christian, go ahead.
Yeah, thank you. Director Gabbard, two follow-ups on questions that have been asked. You mentioned the previous DNIs during the president's first term. One of them reports to you right now, if I'm not mistaken, John Ratcliffe. So have you not spoken to him about why this information was not declassified during the first term?
He was in that position for a very short period of time. The work that began back then we have picked up and absolutely completed. We are continuing to investigate this. Additional whistleblowers are now coming forward because they see an opportunity for the truth to come to light. And as Caroline said, for real accountability to be brought forward. The accountability is the essential part of this. We can show the truth, reveal the truth. The accountability needs to occur to be able to start to restore that trust in the integrity of our,
Yes, ma'am.
of our democracy.
And then just quickly, I know you said you would leave the charging to DOJ, but the statute of limitations on conspiracy is 5 years. So what else could they possibly pursue besides treason?
I think that's a great question for Attorney General.
I mean, you can go with sedition if you want. 20 years imprisonment is max. I'm sorry, if a sitting fucking president tries to use psychological warfare to install whatever government he wants to.
Pam Bondi. We're providing all of the evidence, all of the intelligence that we have, both redacted and unredacted versions, referring it to the Department of Justice and the FBI.
We'll take one more, Charlie, go ahead.
How credible was the information about Hillary Clinton's health? The report said that it was from DNC, sourced from the DNC. Have you seen that information, or do you think that maybe Russia was overemphasizing?
I'm sorry, I'm not listening to. I'm chasing something in my head here. Again, projection. Donald Trump is installing a government kind of situation. He's installing his Louis Listen Marxist tactics. Accuse your enemy of that which you are doing. How long has this shit been going on? Because if a sitting fucking president is willing to wage psychological warfare against the citizens of that fucking country to install his own fucking government to play along with whatever the fuck is going on with that shit. The rot goes further and deeper than that then, doesn't it?
What they had.
All I have seen is what the Intelligence Committee have reported through their investigation.
Conspiracy. 51 spies who lied?
The underlying point there is that we understand from intelligence what Russia said that they had.
A conspiracy is 2 or more. You got 51.
They were trying to influence the election, as President Obama and
Could I get you a
James
Bud Light?
Clapper and
No.
John Brennan, everybody said they were doing in order to support Donald Trump's election. They would have released the most damning of that information, some of which I detailed here. You'll find the rest in the report, prior to the election to help Donald Trump win. They specifically withheld what they had on her, the most damning information, because they thought that she would win the election. They had plans to release it just prior to her inauguration to, again, sow discord and chaos in America.
And if I may,
So if anything, the Russians were actually trying to help fucking Hillary Clinton win, because if Hillary Clinton win, they would release this damning fucking evidence against her. And the American people would be like, bitch, we elected you? Wouldn't it be in Russia's favor if Hillary Clinton win because they had damaging evidence against her and not fucking Trump? But Trump seemed to be the most fair as far as talking and as far as having a conversation with. So yeah, I guess I would want Trump. Let's have a conversation. Because Hillary Clinton means goddamn war. We've been setting it up for fucking generations. Every problem we've ever had has apparently been the fault of the Russians since the fall of the Berlin Wall. Wow. Right? You think of it that way. It is kind of fucked up, right? And Russia wanted to be part of NATO. We said, yeah, you're welcome to fuck in. And Bill Clinton took him to the side and said, nah, bitch, we don't want you. Douche off. I'm sorry, wouldn't you be slighted? And now you're some kind of badass enemy that everybody's supposed to fucking hate. simply because you actually wanted to play ball with everybody from the fucking start? And everybody said, no, you're the odd man out. You're the bitch that gets picked last. Go away. I mean, fuck you and fuck off. We seem to create our own enemies, do we not? I gotta pee.
On Jeffrey Epstein, can you rule out that he was connected in some way to any kind of intelligence, either foreign or domestic?
I haven't seen any evidence or information that reflects that. If anything comes before me that changes that in any way, support the president's statement loud and clear. If any credible evidence comes forward, he wants the American people to see it.
Great. Director Gabbard, we thank you for your time today. I know you're a busy woman, so we'll let you get out of here, but thank you so much. Okay. I know there's many issues going on today across the world and here at home. If you have any other further questions, I'm happy to take them. Ed, why don't you go ahead?
Yeah, thank you, Caroline. So the Japan trade deal, is that Japan trade deal the start of this number of trade deals that the Treasury Secretary says we're going to see by August 1st?
I think it is. I mean, as you said, we had Japan yesterday. We also had Indonesia, and we had the Philippines as well. The president announcing all three. He came in as the closer in all three of those. I've said many times from this podium that the president's trade team has been in active talks and discussions with many countries around the world, and you've all been anxiously awaiting what those countries were. Now you know three of them, and there's many, many more to go. We have now sent 25 letters.
I'm sorry, are we done with Tulsi's point? I missed the ending because I had to pee. But it looks like she is done. And as a matter of fact, I am too, ladies and gentlemen. And this went a little bit longer because I saw this and I was like, nah, we have to hit it up. And I 100%, look, I want to have that conversation with y'all. Me, Rob, Sweeney, Davey for brevity, but Davey understands. Davey follows this shit. He gets it. I think it would be a badass. We do it members only, but I think it would be great. And I apologize in advance for Alexis and Mama G, but I think we need to have this conversation because I believe Tulsi's right. If you're going to be, as a sitting president, levying psychological warfare against me to make me vote in your way, whether it works or not is not the fucking point. Again, just like General Milley's saying that if Trump were to order an attack on China, I'd have called China and told them, oh, you admitted to open fucking treason. Didn't matter that the actual fucking action did not work. The fact that you admitted that you would actually commit treason. Okay? He admitted he would commit treason. You got a president levying psychological warfare against you to make you vote his way so he can install whatever the fuck he wants to and keep passing it down. Wouldn't that be subverting your vote? Because they straight up fucking lie every time they turn around about everything, so you would just vote one way. The internet broke that. Now you have a sitting president spying on a campaign. You have a sitting president making up fucking information, federal documents, classifying all that shit so you can't see. He just says, yeah, this is a thing. This happened. And you don't consider that levying any kind of war against you. You don't consider these judges that attacked Trump. They went after him for every goddamn thing. All made up. Every fucking bit of it. You don't consider that levying legal warfare against you? Because if they do it to him, they'll do it to you. We all know that. That isn't legal lawfare or warfare. Let's talk about the economical warfare when Biden came into fucking office and everything skyrocketed. Yes, it came beforehand. That was actually due to the M1 money supply skyrocketing under Trump because of COVID. I get you 100%, but it was perpetrated and ridden the fuck out behind Joe Biden, who wanted to tax you into fucking oblivion to goddamn pay for it. We're $37 trillion in debt. You don't think that's actual economical warfare against you? Transgender comic books in Peru. Does anybody think we were actually making these and shipping them to Peru? Or do we actually believe that they were taking that fucking money and pocketing it? You don't think that's economic warfare? Jerome Powell won't lower the fucking rates just to give Trump a fucking win because, hey, inflation's fucking dropping. The price of everything's going to fuck down, but that means your dollar's buying worth is going up. So you do have a little bit more at the end of every fucking week now. Can we admit that? Tulsi is right. And there is more to come from this. I guarantee it. And it starts with this. I'll bet $100 bills to a bucket of shit that it involves the 2020 fucking election. If I lose, I owe you 100. If I win, you can keep that bucket of shit. Ladies and gentlemen, y'all have a good night. I will see you again tomorrow. I want to jump over real quick and have some fun. Bullshit and have some fun. Or bullshit and play some games with Scott. But for right now, I'm just going to go ahead and sign the hell off. I appreciate every single one of you. Thanks for the raid, Rob. I definitely want to have that conversation with y'all. I think that would be a great one. But for right now, I got to get out of here. Have a good night.
Comes a president. We can't start our own little business here.
That's all I need. I'll make it happen with some work and belief. Know what I want, so I'll take it on. I'll make mistakes, but mistakes make you strong. Let's break it down for a minute. I want the crown, I'm gon' get it. You hear me loud, man, I'm winning. Yeah, Charlie Sheen will be grinning. These ladies know that I'm sinning, and this is just the beginning. I'm closing in the night inning. There ain't no point in resisting. Living life like a dream. Live it right, that's the thing. Every night got a team. I've been tied to the scene. Out on stage, here I'm screaming. Okay, it's a dream, and I pray as a team. One day it'll be me. If I want it, then I'll get it. Head down, don't regret it. Push myself to the limit. If I play it, then I win it. I'm just saying, I'm just living for today. For a minute, I don't stay. I just visit, have no shame. I admit it. Looking on me to see if I succeed, to see if I believe. They're looking up to me. They want the best of me now, best of me now, best of me now, best of me. They want the best of me now, best of me now, best of me now, best of me.